All right, guys, welcome back to the Tiralosi Twins podcast. Yep, our next guest has 6.6 million followers on TikTok and 298,000 followers on Instagram. Let's welcome Nic Suarez. Welcome on. Welcome on.
What's up? How are y'all doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm just getting getting my day started. I'm excited to be on. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we actually did want to ask, I guess, how we start these podcasts is we love to hear how you got started. So I guess just if you could walk us through just what got you into social media and how you got started really.
Yeah. Cool. So how I got started with social media is I'd always been like pretty interested in just social media in general. Like back in college, I went to UT Austin, and I would like post a lot on Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. And I kind of, was pretty good at it. So then when we went into COVID and the pandemic, I was sort of just at home in my senior year of college. And I didn't know exactly what I was doing because I was sort of I had previously worked in music. I had worked with like the Recording Academy, which is like the Grammys and stuff. And I do a lot of music. And so I'd always knew I wanted to be in entertainment in some sort of way. But I thought I'd start off at like an agency or, at a label or something like that. And since none of that was really existing at the time, I sort of just started posting, and I was like, all right, like, let's see where we can take this basically, which is the story I feel like of a lot of people who started in social media in the last few years. And so I just sort of ran with that. And for the first, 4 months, nothing really. I think I had like one or two viral videos right before the pandemic when I just like posted for fun because it was like, I think I went to the Grammys and that like people loved that video. But it's like you can't go to the Grammys every week, And so
Right.
I just sort of ran with it. And for like 5 months, nothing was really catching. But eventually I started to see some growth. And I think by the um, end of that summer, August, I think I had about 10K on TikTok, and I was pretty happy with that. And I was just excited, and I was like, all right, I could do this. And so I sort of ran with that. And then sort of in November of that year, I sort of struck gold where I had that sort of like my most well, now maybe not my most viral, but at the time was like the most viral video I had ever had. And it was like this video of me with vampire fangs essentially. And so that video just like blew up, and I sort of ran with that. I ran with that concept and the whole vampire just thing, and I just did that for months and months and months. And I sort of built that up, and then as soon as I saw people were less interested in that, sort of like middle of 2021, I sort of started bringing in my family, and I knew that my dad loved to make videos, and so I started working with my dad, and just bringing him in after work, and we would just do videos and have fun with it. And then I would bring my brother in, and he kind of liked it because he's a senior in high school. And people talk in high school, and they'd be like, oh, like your brother's on TikTok, and he'd be
Yeah.
like, yeah, like I'm in his videos and things. So he just sort of ran with it. And so since then I've sort of been doing a lot of content with my family, starting to switch it up. And now I'm sort of in a new phase, and where I'm starting to hopefully cross over into a little bit more, what I would say like mainstream media. So a little bit more acting, and also I do a lot of music, and I've always done music. And so, sort of trying to promote that too, now that I've sort of built up these platforms. And so it's been a fun ride. And I know that was a really long-winded answer, but it's been a really fun ride. And now I'm ready for, the next step. And I'm just like grateful for everything that has happened in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, that's
Wow, that's
yeah,
yeah,
that's an
that's
amazing
really
story.
awesome.
Did I guess did you start out posting, what was the first videos that you started seeing traction on?
So I sort of brushed over that, but initially right before COVID hit, I went to the Grammys, because I was working for the Recording Academy at the time, and I sort of got these like chance 2 tickets to it, and I was super excited. And I wasn't using TikTok at the time, but my friends were like, you should post this on TikTok, like when you go to the Grammys. And I was like, all right. So I literally downloaded the app like maybe that week when I got to LA. And it was maybe my third video I ever put out, and it got like 600K views. And at the time, I was like, whoa, like that is absolutely crazy. And I think I got like 3, 4, 5,000 followers just off the bat from the virality of that first video. But like I said, you can't go to the Grammys all the time. And so then after that, I sort of would do like a video here and now for the next 2 months. I think I did like a couple videos, but nothing was really hitting. And then when I first saw virality again, was sort of like that summer. And I think I did like a couples TikTok with my girlfriend, and it like blew up. But it wasn't really the content I necessarily was wanting to make, but it was like a fun little video we made, and people were like, that's so cute. Um, so yeah, but really I started to see traction that summer. And then in November of 2020 is when it really that's when it really picked up. And that's when sort of like the whole vampire section of my TikTok really blew up. And so that was really big, I would say, from November 2020 till about, it probably went until like the middle of 2021. And then I sort of phased it out a little bit, but I still do it sometimes and bring it back because a lot of people still ask for it, and it's fun to do. So
that's awesome. That's interesting. Yeah, girls, I guess, really love vampires. So
yeah, that's something that I guess you would see because there's all the vampire TV shows and like the TVDs and the Vampire Diaries and the whatever Twilights. But yeah, it was really like a weird craze and phenomenon for especially a couple weeks, like the first 2-3 weeks. It was just crazy. I feel like I couldn't escape it from myself, and also just like other people tagging me and asking me questions and things like that. And it was like fun. And I sort of just, I was just like I just stayed very true to making the content, and just hopefully like the videos I was making were entertaining. And as long as people were entertained, I was happy, and I had a good time doing it. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's what's important, really. So you started on TikTok. Did you ever do like a little bit of Vine or make a couple videos on like Vine or anything beforehand, and then just like TikTok was like the one you really like started?
Yeah, so I was an avid user of Vine. I would say I wouldn't say I was a great creator on Vine. I think I probably made like a handful, like 6, 7. None of them did anything. I thought at the time I could be, like a famous Viner, but when Vine was sort of at its peak in like 2012, 2013, or whatever, 2011 to like 2013 or whenever it was, I was sort of like an 8th grader. So I was in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, kind of like, and then I think that Vine sort of died early in my high school. And so I was still a little bit young, I would say, to just like have the knowledge to create, because I feel like unless you get lucky as a kid and just blow up, a lot of people who are becoming popular are like, they have the capacity to understand like what's going to be popular essentially.
Right.
But when you're that young, like when you're 14, 13 in 8th grade and you like watching Vines, your Vines aren't going to be good, So I think I was a little bit young to really blow up on Vine. And so when TikTok came back around and it was sort of like a similar concept, I was like, I feel like I have the capacity to do this now. Because I consumed a lot of social media, just like YouTube, things like that. And so it was like a perfect opportunity.
Yeah. That was kind of similar to us. We were more of viewers or watchers of Vine, and then once we saw TikTok come around, we're like, oh, this is our chance to actually be creators, I guess. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's crazy too, because when you're that young, and you're like watching, well, I don't know, are y'all, how old are y'all? 26, 27?
25, about to be 26.
Okay,
in like 26. A couple months.
Yeah, so we're basically like a year apart. And so it's sort of the same thing. Like I'm 24 now. I'm about to turn 25 in a few months. And it's crazy because when you're that young, it looks so easy. Like you're like, wow, that guy's just so funny, or like that girl's so funny, like I love their
Yeah.
content. They're so creative. And then you get on the other end of it when you're young, and then you're like, why are my videos blowing up when you're a kid or whatever, and you make one. But then you get older and you start to make videos, and maybe you get lucky with one, or maybe you get lucky with a few. But then eventually, you realize that it takes a lot of effort to stay creative like that all the time, and really like pump out ideas and stay on top of what's trending, who's trending, what things are going on, what your audience wants to see, like what you want to make. Like balancing all those things is really difficult. And so you're like, wow, I don't know why I thought I could do that at 13, because I can barely do that now. And I'm like, in my mid 20s. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just a funny
Exactly.
concept, because I look back at it and I'm like, wow, I always thought that was so fun and easy. And then you get here, and it's a different type of hard than like working, obviously like a service industry job or something where you're like working grueling hours. But it's a lot of like mental, you have to have a lot of mental sort of fortitude, and you always have to keep pushing. And when things are low, you have to stay strong. And so I think that's the hardest part in being, in social media and being in anything in the digital space as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
definitely.
I think especially now too, to compare our, I guess, social media nowadays to how Vine was, is I feel like, well,
Yeah.
one, there's way more competition, and then secondly,
Mm-hmm.
I guess because of that competition, I feel like, we just have to adapt so much faster to where we have to be on it basically
Mm-hmm.
every day. But I feel like Vine, they
Yeah.
could pretty much make something for months. They could really
Yeah.
work on a video for months and not really be forced to change it every so
Yeah.
often.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think it says a lot about just sort of how people are consuming, content nowadays. Whereas like YouTubers or whatever, or not or whatever, but YouTubers, back, even a few years ago, and still today to some extent, but especially a few years ago, they could put out one video a week and just be the most popular YouTuber, or two videos a week, and really spend time on like curating those videos. But now you see a lot of YouTubers like trying to put out videos, like, several videos a week. Or if they're only putting out one YouTube video a week, it's not enough. They also have to be promoting it on TikTok and Instagram and all these other platforms. Because if they're only posting on YouTube once a week, they're not going to be able to stay necessarily as, I guess, relevant as some other
Right.
YouTubers who are really, cutting down their YouTube videos into clips and posting it, like sort of like how y'all were talking about, like cutting, if you have a podcast, taking the podcast and clipping it all across YouTube and Instagram and shorts and all these other things that are feeding into YouTube. Whereas before it was like, I just have my YouTube channel and I edit my video or two a week, and that's just what I focus on. And then people are drawn to that. Now you have to promote it on like 4 or 5 other platforms just to get people there, because it's not the same. But it's cool. Like there's a lot of plus sides to it. But it's also a lot, so.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. It's so saturated and so competitive now because, the opportunity's there and everyone realizes that. So everyone's just pumping out
Yeah.
crazy amount of content, which, like you said, is also good because we get all this other entertainment that might not have become of it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a cool thing, but it's also a lot all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you also brought up a good point too. Is like, when you were younger, you were saying that you can't really come up with certain things or
Hmm.
be as good or at videos, making videos and stuff like that, which we don't
Hmm.
realize. But a lot of the even like late 20s and 30s, the people that are creating,
Hmm.
they started on something else and didn't quite do as well, but they got their foot in the door and got their feet wet with
Hmm.
that you didn't know. And that's kind of why we're also starting this podcast is there's a lot of backstory that
Yeah,
nobody really knows about. You have to get good at it starting on something else kind of, and then, kind of go from there.
exactly. I think it's crazy to look too, because I look at when I was first starting, especially, there was a lot of, I think at the time, I was like 22, 21, 22, sort of when the Hype House and like those people were sort of blowing up. And I was like, wow, like that's, I was a little bit older than like they were, but I was like, wow, that's so cool. These people sort of just rose to fame. But then if you take a look actually at sort of like a lot of the people who were sort of in the Hype House or the Sway House or whatever was going on at the time, like I know Blake Gray, who's I don't know if y'all know him, but he was in the Sway House. He had been doing social media for I think since like 2014, and he was actually in or really associated with MadCon, which was like Cameron Dallas, if you know them, and like just some of these like OG like influencers on YouTube and Vine. So he had been around for like 5 or 6 years, same with like Bryce Hall and these people. And I was like, wow, they just like sort of shot to fame. But it was like, no, they had sort of started 5, 6 years ago, laying the groundwork so that now in this next rise, they could sort of really capitalize on that. And so it's crazy because a lot of the people who you think are overnight successes are really, laying that groundwork early. And it doesn't always have to be in like on another platform. It could be like, I know for me, if I hadn't have gone to school for film for like 3 or 4 years or for 4 years, I would have not had the capability to like story tell or also, edit or also shoot and just do a lot of things in the way that I use to sort of like help myself lift myself up on the platform. And I just, I wouldn't have had that experience. And so you're right, definitely really right about that, is that, there's a lot of groundwork that gets put in place before you see these people that just pop up.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I definitely want to come back to this, but I also wanted to ask you, because that's a good point like that you bring up, because I was going to ask you anyways. You have really good like quality and like the content and the transitions and the video quality as well. It's like I was going to ask you how'd you learn that and what you do. Maybe you can go more in depth with that.
Yeah. So basically I have a couple different setups. I sort of like to structure my, and I know I come across as like, oh, I'm super, super organized in the way, but sometimes I'm a mess, like everyone's, a mess, but I do like have some certain sort of rules that I set for myself in terms of filming. Like if I can get natural light, like I'm going to film in natural light. And the best source of natural light for me is this window that's in my bedroom, which I'm in front of right now. And so a lot of my videos, you'll see like this similar background because it's just the best source of light in my house. And it like comes and it brightens up everything and it gives a really crisp look to the videos. So if I can't set up natural light, I have 3 or 4 sort of LED lights that I can set up as well. And those lights, I'll usually get closer in or something like that so that those can really provide a lot of light for me and for my setup. And usually I'm just shooting on my iPhone. I like to shoot back camera if I can, because it's just a crisper look, especially if you're going to be further away. Like if I'm shooting a vlog or if I'm shooting, like I do a couple of these videos where it's sort of styling my dad, styling myself, whatever. I'll shoot on the back camera because it provides, like, if you're further away, it's a little bit less blurry. But overall, like, you learn over time and you get a better phone as like things go on. Like when I first started, I was on the iPhone, I think 10 or 11 at the time. I think it was on the 10, and it was a great phone. But once I got the 12, whatever I have now, it was like so much better, like leaps and bounds. And so you just like keep adapting and adjusting your light and setups for that. And, really all you need is your iPhone and natural light, and you can set it up really well and have a good place to keep your phone, and don't move your phone around too much. And you'll honestly end up with pretty good, light. And I think the thing that people struggle with the most is like getting good lighting. But if you're just in front of a window, your lighting is going to look 90% better than 90% of people's lighting. So it takes a lot to learn, and you got to schedule your days around that. Like there's days where I'd be like, okay, I'm off to the gym. And then I look at the time and I'd be like, okay, well, it's 3 right now, and I know the sun's going to set at 6. So if I get back from the gym at 5 and I have to shower, I'm not going to be able to film. So I'm like, all right, let me go film right now. And then I'll go to the gym after because, you know, I'll be a lot less stressed if I get back later and I have 10 minutes to wrap up the filming that I wanted to wrap up, you know? So it's
Yeah.
just like things like that and being aware of your day and what's going on and sort of like the setups that you have.
Yeah, that happens to us all the time. We have to pretty much like we try to go to the gym every day, but then the day
Yeah.
just kind of drags. Like, you know, you work on stuff, or maybe you
Exactly.
have to check your email and respond to emails, and then before you know it, it's like,
Yeah.
do I go to the gym or do I film with good lighting or during the day? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. And that's crazy to think that, like, you know, you're scheduling your day around when you're filming, but it makes sense because if this is your, you know, this is your work, like people don't just go to the gym, you know, in the middle of their 11 a.m. meeting, you know? So if
Right.
you have the set aside time to film, then it's like, all right. And sometimes it doesn't, it like leads to, dang, like I missed the gym today because I was filming and editing and now it's, I wanted to get this video out by 9 p.m. and the gym closes at 10. So am I going to go for like 20 minutes now? You know? So it's like, dang, like I missed
Right.
out. But it's like, all right, well, let me be smarter tomorrow and make sure I can go tomorrow or do something else.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I did want to ask too, your recent videos, going back to the quality,
Mm-hmm.
are those filmed on the iPhone, the back of the iPhone camera, or?
Specifically sort of like the transition ones that I've been doing.
Yeah, the transition ones.
So actually, those have been filmed on the front. I'm pretty sure. And the reason those are filmed on the front is because, so basically, in that sort of setup, and if you look at the videos, it's essentially just me, and then you know I'll transition into my dad, or it'll be something of me. And those will be, I'll sort of have the phone angled a little bit downward, and I'll have like a really strong LED light on me because it's almost like the sun blaring on you, but it's just this LED light. And I'll fill up this background color with sort of just like the blue from these lights or the blue from, I also have some LED lights going around the window. And so I'll sort of like have that main light and then I'll fill the rest with a colored light because that light will sort of make sure it's a little bit less grainy, because the reason it's grainy is the ISO is essentially like trying to like make up for loss of light. So if like in the shadows it can't find any light, it's gonna, you know, become grainier. So if you add like some blue or some whatever, it still looks cool. It looks a little bit more stylized, but it looks cool, and then it sort of like makes the quality a little bit clearer. So those are on the front, and it's easier to do the front sometimes so you can like actually see how you look, especially when I'm working with my dad or whatever, because he wants to, you know, see how he looks, as do we all. But so those are, but a lot of times I'll film on the back camera if it's like I'm sort of trying to get like a full shot of my room, because if you film on the front camera and I'm standing back there, it's blurry, like it's going to look blurry. But if I'm up close on the front camera and I have a good source of light, it's going to look good. So it sort of just depends on what the video is and the setup is. And sometimes I'll start filming on the front camera and be like, this looks horrible, let me go switch to the back camera and readjust everything. But I try to like pick one and stick to it and know which one I'm going to do going in. So
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
yeah.
because the quality is incredible. The lighting and I would have thought you'd be using like a very, you know, very good DSLR by how you're, and I
Oh
wouldn't
yeah.
even think the front camera, because the front camera, I guess it just
Yeah.
comes down to lighting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I mean, that's really what it is. I think like lighting is super important because the reason the front camera, I mean, obviously if you have an older iPhone, like if you're working with an iPhone 6 or 7 or maybe even an 8, you know, the front camera might just be it might just be not be that great. But once you get sort of on past like the 10, 11, 12, you know, especially into the 13, 14, the front camera is pretty good. And as long as you have enough light so that the camera isn't trying to sort of make up for that loss of light, it's not going to be grainy. It's not going to be anything bad, really. Because if you think about it, like, and you're in front of a really bright light and you're taking a selfie, that selfie looks like really crisp, you know. So if you can sort of like emulate that sort of light and emulate how the sunlight would sort of go into your room or onto your setting, then you're going to have like a pretty crisp video on you. And I actually used to use DSLRs for some videos, but it's such a pain. Like shooting with a DSLR, and I know that mine didn't necessarily like the view cam or the view fold or whatever couldn't turn all the way, so I would sort of just be shooting blind essentially. Sort of like if you're shooting with the or the back camera. So I was shooting blind, and then I would never really know where to stand or where this. So sometimes I'd get a great take, and like this would be the frame, and I would be like here in it, you know, and
Yeah.
like
Right.
that sucks because you're like, I just spent 10 minutes filming this, finally got a great take, and all the takes are a little bit off center, and I just can't use them, or they're just not going to look as good. So, you know, I sort of switched away from that, using the DSLR, and just sort of was like, all right, I'm going to use my phone. I know that I can get good quality on my phone, and I'm just going to like invest in some lights, that will help me reach that at all times of the day. So if I can't get natural light and I want to shoot, you know, something, I can have a lighting setup. And that took me forever to get to, because it used to be once the natural light went down, I just wasn't filming for the day. But now I sort of like set it up. So, you know, like last night I did a transition with my dad with that sort of similar setup where the light was really bright in front of us. Um, and I think we didn't start until 7 maybe. And the sun was down at that point. But I wasn't worried about it. Whereas if you caught me last year, there was going to be no video made because I just didn't understand how to set that up.
Yeah.
So,
No, I get that. Yeah, we used to use we would try to use the DSLR, but it would be, like you said, it'd be a pain. Like we had the one that flipped, but then you have to worry about the audio from the camera. You have to worry about transferring the files.
Yeah, it doesn't even go into like the editing portion, where on TikTok you just stop and do it, and then now you can kind of edit the clips right there. So
yeah. Did you all use, so if you're filming a TikTok and it's sort of something beyond just like a basic, you know, trend or audio, do you all do most of the editing in TikTok?
Now, now we kind of do.
yeah,
I think before,
Okay.
when they first introduced it, we wouldn't really use it just because it would make like a weird popping noise every once in a while, or like the editing just wouldn't be there. So we would film on like you said, preferably the back camera, but sometimes we'll just film on the front camera now. But yeah, we would film it on the phone locally, and then just kind of put in either a software, just edit on the phone.
yeah.
Cool. I should say that I do film outside of the app for about half of my videos. So half of them I'll film in app, and then half I'll film outside. So for that transition, I do film outside of the app. And so I think that does help to sort of like because I can shoot in 4K outside the app. So it looks, even if I'm shooting on the front camera, it looks, you know, like a little bit more crisp. And then when I put that I usually edit in After Effects, sometimes Premiere, but these are like Adobe softwares. And after that, I'll export that, and then I'll sort of send it to this other application, which is called DaVinci Resolve. And DaVinci is essentially like, it's an editing software, but it's also like basically like the Premiere coloring software.
Yeah.
And I got really good at coloring. Well, I took a course back in school, but I've just done it so much that I sort of just small tweak the color so that like the contrast and then the lighting and the highlights and everything matches what I think TikTok would look best on. And then I export that at the highest quality. So then when I put it back in TikTok, it sort of like doesn't have much compression on it. And I think that also helps lead to the quality. Because if I was trying to film the transitions with my dad all in app, they would still look good, I think. But I wouldn't be able to have as much control as over like the color and the light. And, you know, if there's something in the background, like I can blur it out, or if there's anything that happens, like I can control it if I'm working with it in After Effects and then bringing it into DaVinci.
Yeah.
So it does take a while.
Sorry.
No. Go.
Well, I was gonna say that's awesome, because if there's one thing that I want to be like really good at is color grading, because it really makes a huge difference. And I tried it a little bit, but it's so difficult. It takes me forever.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's definitely not an easy thing to get started with. But once you sort of just understand the basics, you can sort of like mess around with it. It's really easy to get like carried away. Like you're like, all right, I'm going to take it in and I'm going to make this look crazy. And then all of a sudden, like your shadows look like red. And then you're like, your highlights on your face start to look like green. And you're like, this looks horrible. And you're like, I don't even know how to go back. Like, let me just start over. So it's easy to do that. But, if you just look simply like at what it is, and if you get a good shot to start that already has good color, then all you're really doing is making small adjustments. Like I always do, I turn down the shadows so they're like a little bit darker, and then I turn the highlights up so that they're not like peaking basically. So it's not, like too bright at any points. And then I turn the saturation up because TikTok always likes to desaturate things slightly. And I just do small little things. And sometimes like if I have like, something on my face, like sometimes I remember once I was like shaving and I like cut my face a little bit, and I literally I blurred that out so you couldn't see it. And I was like, hey, like no one will know that I cut myself shaving right before this, So it's just like small things like that you like learn to do. And then once you know how to do them, you just sort of can like do it on repeat. It's just like I got like 6-7 steps that I run every time, and I just run those steps, and I kind of like know how I want it to look. And so you should get into it for sure. Like you should just watch some videos on it, and you would probably pick it up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I definitely did. I definitely watched a few videos that are really in depth, and some people have their different ways of going about it, just like anything. But yeah, I definitely did too much before, and still got to learn some things.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's incredible. And
yeah, I wanted to ask too. So you went to school for was it film and like videography, or was it targeted towards? I guess what was it targeted towards? I guess.
So it's so like I said, I went to University of Texas at Austin, and essentially there's a program there in their school at the school called it's called RTF, which stands for Radio, Television, and Film. And essentially like it covers a lot of different things. You can sort of track your classes however you want. So if you want to be a director or whatever, you can take classes that are more in like directing people. If you wanted to be like a colorist, or that's not the word, but well,
I have no clue. I believe that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is, but like it also, yeah. So, but like there's like several words, but so if you wanted to be like someone who does like color grading or whatever, then basically, like you could take classes on, like I said, I took a class on Da Vinci and color grading, and then you could take more in-depth classes. So I sort of took the path of, I wanted to do a little bit more directing, and I also wanted to get like more technical skills. And so I sort of took classes like, I know I took like a music video directing class. I took a web series class where I sort of directed a web series. It was actually about vampires. Funny enough. I don't know. It's weird that came full circle, but it was like funny at the time that I made it, and then it was like funny that like a year later it was like, oh, this guy must be obsessed with vampires, and I was like, I mean, vampires are cool, but so yeah, I took a bunch of directing classes. So I think that sort of helped me in like ways to lead, or just like, understand like, all right, like if I have my dad in on this video, he's not going to understand that I want him to do this and this and this. And so sort of like being able to take the time and like really understand and explain these things. And, also like how to like sort of direct people just in general on like, how to evoke the right emotions essentially. So with TikTok, it's a little bit less important, but if you're lip syncing something or whatever, like it sounds lame, but if you're not doing it right, like it's going to look bad basically. So sometimes I'll be like, no, dad, like, why are you singing it like that? Like you gotta, look happy or like whatever. So just like getting these things so that it looks, a little bit better, and it adds to the overall just like feeling of a video. And then I also took a lot of technical courses, which were like color grading, editing. I took some like 2D visual effects, 3D visual effects, really bad at them, but it ended up, I ended up learning After Effects pretty well, and so and Premiere and stuff, and so that sort of is like that will help me a lot. And a lot of it is also just like growth on your own. So you can take a class, you can take like a color grading class, and by the end of those 3 months, you can understand like, the sort of like maybe the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps on, what people recommend. But you also like need to practice on your own or do it enough so that you understand, because otherwise you're going to get there and you're going to be like, like, let me refer back to my notes. How do I do, and then like that just slows down everything. But if you do that and you just constantly are doing it, then eventually it sort of becomes second nature. We just open it up, that, in a coloring software, there's like, they're called nodules basically. So you're like, all right, I know on my first 3 nodes, it's going to represent like, exposure, it's going to represent saturation, and it's going to represent like my color reels, which are going to, be like my highlights, midtones, whatever. So then like just like technical stuff that you don't even think about at some point, but like if you took a class, you would know, but if you don't practice it, you'd be like, like, what is that again? And so just like taking the classes definitely set me up and really got me to open up the softwares and start playing with them. But they definitely don't teach you everything. A lot of that has to be on your own. You have to take like initiative on your own to sort of like learn those things and really like grow. So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the infrastructure is probably the most important part, because then from there you know what to look up. I feel like a lot of times when people get started, they're like, where do I start? And then they go down, they try to do too much on one aspect of it.
Exactly.
And then they ignore like the whole other aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true. Like I have a friend of mine who he's really wanting to get into YouTube, sort of just editing. And so I sort of let him like borrow some software or something so that he could just like start to get to learn it, because it's also like expensive to like run, some of these softwares. And he was just like, man, like I watched like a 2-hour video and now I just don't understand anything that they taught me everything, but I also learned nothing. And I was like, yes, you need to start. Just don't do that, because if you watch some of these videos, they try to teach you so much or whatever, and you just get overwhelmed. But really, if they set a basis or like a basic infrastructure of like 3 things, and then, you get good at those things, then once you know where everything's placed at, then you can be like, all right, I want to, make my hair a different color. All right, like how can I do that? Then you can look up a specific YouTube video for like, oh, how to change my hair color, or oh, how to like get rid of a pimple on my face or whatever, Whereas like if otherwise you just like don't know where anything is when you open it, and you're just like, it's like looking at, like a alien spaceship, because you're like, what are all these buttons? What does any of this mean? But if you know where things are at, like you said, then you can look up specifics. And then that's where like it starts to get fun, and you grow from learning those specific things. So
Yeah, definitely. I agree 100% with all that, because I mean, I'm guilty of it too. Is like you look up something like, say, I guess the color grading, and this person, you watch this like hour-long video of this person who's just going through, everything throughout the app or color grading in general. And you try to do it yourself, and then you mess up the order of it. You mess up, you completely forget. And you also go down this rabbit hole of trying to learn everything. And then you're just like, wow, I don't know where to start or continue or what have you. So you kind of stop, and it's kind of overwhelming. But definitely how you said is like, if you can take it one step at a time and get the foundation down, you're going to be much better off.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really the key. And also just staying consistent, like doing it as often as you can and opening up. Cause I know that like, there's probably never like a week where I don't open up After Effects. And so I think like that keeps me just on top of it. And so if someone asked me to do something now, they were like, hey, like, how do I do this? I might not know exactly how to do it, but I know the tools that could get me to do it. So if you were like, hey, like, how can I make my hand, like, my fingers grow on my hand? I might not be able to I might not be like, oh, well, I watched a tutorial on that, but I know the different tools in the software that could make your fingers on your hand grow, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I could like mess around with it and get it to that point or whatever.
That's
So,
a really good point. Is just like opening it up and getting familiar with the different like buttons and tools
mhm,
in different ways.
exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the tough part.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to ask you more because we're in the editing aspect of it. We're such beginners. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
there's little stuff that we could add that would make our content like a million times better, and we would have more videos to make because we know we can do those edits.
Right.
Yeah. What are y'all what software do y'all use?
Premiere Pro usually.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Premiere is like, I mean, especially if you're doing like longer form editing, like if anything is over basically like a minute, um, Premiere is like the place to be because it can just handle so much more playback. Like if you try to play a video in After Effects, because it's mainly like a visual effects editor, if you try to play a video that's over a minute on there, it's just so slow because it just doesn't it's doing a lot more and it can't really keep up. But Premiere, like you can put in hours and hours and hours of footage into that and it can just like play it back, and run it. And you might have to render it, but like once you render it, it'll just play back perfectly fine. And so it's just like a powerful software. And it's also a lot easier to use than some of the other softwares like I don't know if you ever heard of Avid, but it's just like I'm not gonna slander Avid online, but it's just a more difficult software, and it does things that Premiere. It does the same things Premiere can do, and some things it does better, some things it doesn't do as well. But it's definitely not as user friendly. Whereas Premiere is like a good balance of that. And then I forgot what's the Apple one called?
Oh, Final Cut, I think.
Final Cut, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of people I know use Final Cut just because it's the most user friendly. But I do have to say, I feel like it doesn't do quite as much, or if something's too user friendly, you get too comfortable with presets and you get too comfortable with that. And then things start to look the same. Like if you think about like iMovie from back in the day, everyone was using like the sparkle intro or whatever,
Yeah.
And so like then everyone's content starts to look the same because everyone's using different templates or easy things that are easy and great for like intro and beginning. But it sometimes is too user friendly to the point where you sort of like aren't challenged to be creative with things. And so I think that's where Premiere is a very good and like really solid platform to do that, or software to do that for your platform.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is editing your favorite aspect of making videos, or do you like filming better, or I guess how would you break that down of what you enjoy the most?
I'd say I think editing is the most like rewarding, like when, especially if I know that I filmed, like sometimes when I'm filming like these get ready, or not get ready with me, but like today I'm like turning my dad into me, or today I'm styling my dad into me, or whatever like the concept for the video is. Sometimes I'll have like 30-40 minutes of video just because I'll be like, all right, dad, like do this pose, like do this, do that, like I'm going to give you the pants, like jump, we're going to transition there. So like at the end I might be so frustrated starting the edit, but then at the end, after I finish the edit, it's like rewarding to look back and be like, wow, this was like 25 minutes of just uncut footage, and now it's like a succinct 15-second video, which is crazy to think. And it has all the concepts there that I wanted it to have. So in that sense, editing is the most rewarding sometimes. But I would say that my favorite aspect of videos, or like my favorite thing about videos, is probably just like you know getting to be like creative with different concepts. And then also like I my favorite thing is when I take risks on concepts and they perform well. I think that's probably like just like my favorite part is like, I love like being able to try something new and then like putting it out and seeing that people actually like enjoyed it and people were like interested in it. And I think like that's what keeps me like going, is like knowing that like I don't always have to do the same thing, that if I do switch it up, people will like that. um and I think that's the thing that most people struggle with too, is like, falling into the exact same thing. Like I have to only do trends, or people only like me for the vampire content, so I only can do vampire content. And to some extent, like, yes, you should be providing, well, I shouldn't say you should, but to some extent, yes, if you want to, like grow, you should lean into what people are really liking. But also, like, you shouldn't be afraid to like explore and like, go beyond those. And then that's sort of like what I did with my family. And then once that sort of saw traction, you can sort of dive into that. And now I'm looking for like, all right, like what's the next thing? What new video concepts or what new like styles of videos can I try out and see if people like them. And sometimes you put them out and they completely flop and you're like, I'm a failure. But other times you put them out and they do okay, or even if they're not as great or don't do as well as your other concepts, you're like, there's something there that, like, okay, people could learn to really like this, and I enjoy creating this, so I'm going to create more of these. So yeah, I think that's my favorite part, really, is like being able to like play with new concepts and then, like see the reward that it comes from that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I definitely agree with everything you said too. Is because editing is very rewarding because you see how it comes full circle, and it
Hmm.
kind of gets you excited about making videos again and doing that. But
Yeah.
I think the actual creative process in the very beginning with the idea of it and starting that is definitely
Hmm.
the most enjoyable for us.
Yeah. And it's always fun like having a new concept and being like, this concept is going to do, like this concept's going to be fun and I think people are going to like it or whatever. Or even if it's just like, this concept is going to be so fun to make, whatever, and I think that's always the most fun part, like taking out the performance or whatever, because like sometimes, once you get to the end, if you're really happy with a concept or you're really happy with the way a video turned out, then the way it performs, it doesn't matter. Like there'll be times when I'll be like, oh, I'm so excited, like this video turned out so great, like I'm really happy the way this video turned out. And then I'll put it out and people, it did okay, but it wasn't like people weren't really, vibing with it. But I'm like, I loved that concept and I know that like, I had a good time making it, and I'm like happy that I, tried something new. And so then you can't even be like upset or anything. Whereas like if you are just doing the same thing over and over again and you put a video out and you're like, well, I did this 2 days ago and like people loved this, like why aren't people loving it? Then it's
Mhm.
like you get caught in this. So really you should be making content that you enjoy making, because then you're going to worry less about performance and you're going to be more creative, and then in return that's going to ultimately like help you grow, and people are going to be way more interested in what you're making if you're actually putting thought, instead of just like getting in a routine and only doing that and running with that. So
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because it's very demotivating if you're doing something that you don't really enjoy and then it doesn't do as well as it's supposed to. Like,
hmm.
we've definitely fallen into that and, kind of lost, I guess, the joy of actually creating a good, fun video and stuff.
Yeah.
And as well as, like, I mean, yeah, that just enjoying what you're doing. And
Yeah.
we've said it on here before, is we've posted videos and they haven't
hmm.
done as well, and then we've reposted them and they've done a lot better, and we're like,
Yeah.
okay, we knew that video was good. Like, so sometimes
Yeah.
it's the algorithm, sometimes it's like, just what's happening in everyone's daily lives that day. Like, it's random, so
Yeah.
it's not always the idea or the video.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's hard to come to terms with sometimes too, when you are a creator, that like not everything's going to perform well. And I think that like that's what demotivates a lot of people, obviously, is that you could have like a hot streak where for a month or for like 2 months even, your videos are just they're popping off, like they're getting picked up by the algorithm. People are loving the videos that you're putting out. And then you could get totally just boom, cut off one day, basically, essentially.
Mhm.
And so, and that's demotivating. But I think that, like, you know, working really hard and, always staying creative, like, you're gonna get, if you could do it one time, basically, you can do it again, So if you can get one video viral, two video viral, three, whatever, and you can do that, then you can do it again. And if that's what you want to be doing, then, like, you can make that happen, So I think a lot of people, they get into the habit of, like, once some start doing well, they take a break or whatever. And for me, breaks are great. Like, I think great breaks are super important, and you need to take time off to spend it with your family and your friends, and, just take a night off or take whatever off. But I think that, like, if you're finding yourself demotivated, sometimes, like, taking, like, just like, some people's breaks turn into, like, basically they're done, like, they basically quit. And I think, like, if it's something you want to be doing, like, take the time to recover, rest, get your brain back, and then, hit the ground running again. And I think that that's, like, really the key to success, is, like, staying creative, and just keep going. And, like, don't let your stress and your worries and things demotivate you. And, take a break here and now and then, or here and now, whatever you need. But just, like, don't let those breaks turn into you quitting, or if you come back from your break and things aren't still doing well, don't go on another break, because, just, like, keep working, honestly, like, working through it, but not to the point where it's gonna cause you, basically, to feel bad. I think,
Right.
I hope I said that right, but basically,
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
take the breaks you need, but also don't let those breaks turn into, essentially, you stopping, because I feel like that's what you see a lot. Someone will take a 3-month break, and then they'll come back and things will still be not great, and so then they basically just quit. And it's like, I think it's a balance, finding a balance between breaks and also staying motivated and staying happy. And, if you need to quit because you're unhappy, or you're just, like, your mental health's not doing well, 100%. But I think that, like, stopping because, videos aren't performing well, like, I'm like, okay, you can work through it. You did it once, you can do it again. If this is something you really want, as long as your mental health is okay, get back in and let's go. And then that's kind of like how I view it. So as long as I'm feeling okay, I'm like, I'm gonna work through it.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, I feel like a lot of people in this space just have burnout, just because it does take a
Hmm.
long time, and mentally it kind of does mess with you. If you're doing really well on the views and then all of a sudden that stops, like, you stop receiving those views and likes and all that, it does mess with you.
Yeah.
So I guess, how do you combat that burnout, or how do you give yourself that break and stay motivated?
Yeah. Yeah, I just curl up in a ball and I cry. No, I'm kidding. But that was a horrible joke. I thought it would be funny.
That was good.
Um,
That was
but
good. I
no,
liked
like,
it.
it was okay. But sometimes, I think the best way that I handle, and I'm not perfect by any means in terms of the way I handle um stress and stuff, but I think just, like, looking at a broader sort of view always helps. I think, and this is a little bit off, but it'll wind back in. I saw something, or I heard something, that essentially, don't get too caught up in your telling people your goals and dreams and stuff, because although it's good for you to know and it's good for you to be aware and take those steps, essentially, if I were to sit on here and be like, well, my goal is to be, like a famous artist, and I want to tour, and I want to blah, blah, blah. And you get this rush of dopamine from that. And it makes you feel essentially the same way as if you are accomplishing those, right? And so I saw someone that was like, keep those to yourself, or not to yourself, but like don't talk too much about those goals and just have those goals, so that when you accomplish things, you feel, as things are accomplished, you feel sort of like a steady stream of sort of like happiness and this dopamine. Because if you're just only like, okay, like this, if you talk too much about what you're gonna do, then you're like always feeling like you did it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
no,
But
I've never heard of that, but that makes a lot of sense, and it's really goes with what everyone's saying. That like if you like don't talk about it, just do it and keep that drive to yourself, I guess.
Yeah. Like a lot of people say, like move in silence or whatever. I mean, that's kind of like I feel like a very like hype beast way of saying like, but like move in silence and like know what your goals are. And so I think for me, like I know what I want to do, and I know that, I have larger, aspirations. And I think just knowing that those are out there and I still want to reach those, when I look at, a week or two where views are low, or I look at like, like I wish I would have started, like, for example, I'm starting to get a lot more into sort of acting essentially, because I did a lot of film and I acted a lot when I was younger. So I've sort of gotten back into like classes, and I'm working with coaches and stuff. And so, or a coach, I shouldn't say coaches, but so then I looked back at it and I was like, okay, like I'm really happy with where I am right now. But it's easy to be like, ugh, why didn't I, I had this thought a year ago to start acting. Why didn't I do it a year ago? And it's like, well, I'm not going to get hung up on that, So, all right, well, I'm doing it now. And also, I know what I want to do in the future. So, as long as I'm working towards that in some ways, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks of low views is not going to change that in a couple years. I want to be here, and there's so many things beyond social media. And I think that's really important, is that like, it's so easy to be like, I am on TikTok and I want to have, I want to reach 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 million. And you'll never really be satisfied reaching a certain number of followers. So I like to like fill my days with like, other things. Like I'm acting lessons, and, I starting backup voice lessons, and like I play piano too, and like writing music and recording music and other things that feel productive, and they feel like they're working towards my longer term goals, but they're not necessarily, I can control them more than, let's say, my video views or whatever. So it's more like working, instead of just completely working vertically, working also like horizontally and diagonally and in all directions. And if you're working on several things at once, you're not going to be so affected by video views. And even if you're on several platforms, it helps. So, I could be posting on TikTok, views suck for this week, but maybe my reels are doing okay, or maybe I'm like starting to pick up on shorts, and shorts are starting to do better. And yeah, it's not on the same level of what my TikToks are doing, but like it's good for my shorts channel. So things like that, like just keep you, it puts a lot of less, you're spreading your eggs in several different baskets, so that if something is bad or something's not doing quite as how you had planned it, you're not like, feeling devastated that your video did bad or did not as well as you wanted. And you can just be like, focus on the other things. And also just like hanging out with friends. Like I love to hang out with I love to hang out with my girlfriend often. So we hang out a lot. And then also like I have a bunch of just like really good friends. So on the weekends, we'll go out one night, or like I'll hang out with like one or two of my best friends, and, we'll play like video games or something, things that are just like completely off of social media. And I think that that's part of why I love living. Like I live in Dallas, and it's part of why I love living here too, is because it's not necessarily completely filled with like social media all the time. And this, not all my friends are in the social media space, and they're not all, content creators, and they're not all, and so it's not like I feel like, if I don't want to talk about TikTok, and I don't want to talk about YouTube and Instagram, and I don't want to talk about social media or anything digital, then I can just, hang out with my friends and we can go see a movie or something. And it's just like completely, and you can do that in any space, but I feel like specifically because, I'm not living in LA right now, I feel like I can really detach myself from that. And that just keeps me grounded. And also just like, you always think you're doing worse than you are, because I might be like, oh, this is the worst month of my life in terms of views or whatever. Like, I can't believe, like, I feel like I've set myself back like a year. You might think that, but then, no one else is thinking that. Like, literally not a single other person is thinking that, especially people around you. They're like, OMG, like, you have like X amount of followers now, or oh my gosh, like, I can't believe you're, taking acting lessons now. Like, that's so cool. Like, I'm so excited for you. Like, all of the things that you're thinking, no one else is thinking. And if they are thinking that, like, who cares, like, and they're probably not. So I think just like knowing like what is you're doing is important. And just, yeah, I don't know, that was a lot of things that I touched on in there, but
No, that
those are
was
just like a bunch of the ways that I
that was
That's
was
very
good.
true, because we're our own harshest critic, at all times.
yeah.
And we got to remember that, all this social media, like people say, it's a highlight reel. So, I mean, we've
Yeah,
definitely, I personally
exactly.
even have seen, what they post, what people post on social media, and I'm just like, oh wow, their life must be
Hmm.
like this, they must be making all this money. And then you find out it's like,
Hmm.
it's not that great, not that perfect, and you're kind of in
Yeah,
the same position as them.
exactly.
And I also want to
um
touch, oh yeah, go ahead.
no, 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 you go.
I was gonna say, I also want to touch on that same thing that you said earlier too. Was we want to, kind of say the things that we are doing or want to do out loud, and we want to kind of put it out to the universe, and it helps with like backlash of, you know,
Hmm.
whatever people are kind of thinking around us or online. But at the same time, I have noticed that it does kind of lead to that complacency, to where it's like, okay, well, I've said it, I basically
Hmm.
did it, like I'm comfortable now. And yeah, no, definitely just kind of keeping it quiet, keeping it to yourself, and just having that day-to-day outlook, and kind of be relaxed with it as well.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like I said, I heard that somewhere, and I wish I knew where I heard it. It might have been someone on TikTok or something, but
I think I saw that
and it
same video.
yeah, it was like pretty, yeah, I think it was like relatively like viral at the time.
Hmm.
And it was only a couple weeks ago, and it's really crazy to think, because you sit there and you'll tell people like, I want to do this and I want to do that, and I want to be all these things, and when I'm 5 years from now, I know I'm going to be this and I'm going to do this, and that's great. And I think like you need to have goals and you need to set those things, but if you're constantly like feeling that excitement, then like it's not, you're constantly getting that rush of dopamine. Like it feels like you've already done it. And so I think it's really important to be like, all right, like these are the things that I want to do. And I don't know maybe when it's going to happen, but I'm working towards it. And so then and you might not even feel it. Like I know that when I hit, X amount of followers, it wasn't like boom. Like maybe like the first time you hit something, it's like boom. But at some point, you just like have to sit back and be like, wow, like I've come so far from where I started, because you'll lose sight of sort of where you are. And so, yeah, like, sitting back and looking at how far you've come and just like really taking in those moments is very important. And then knowing where your goals are in the future, and just, having those and running with them. But if you're not always talking about them, then, you won't feel disappointed where in a year, if you were telling everyone in a year, I'm going to be on this show, and then a year comes around from now and you're not on that show or whatever, you're going to be really sad. But if you tell yourself like, I'm going to get on the show, and then people ask you, what are you doing? And you're like, oh, like, like I'm acting and I'm doing this and I'm working on that. And people are going to be impressed with what you're doing. And so then when you actually do hit it, and then you can finally tell everyone like, hey guys, like I landed this show, then it's going to be like, boom, rather than like, if you've been telling everyone, yeah, I'm going to be on the show, and then you finally hit it, it's going to be like, great, like this is everything, like that's so great. But then you're going to be like, yeah. But if it's like, boom, I did this, then everyone's going to be like, whoa, I don't know. So
Yeah.
I mean, part of that might be true, part of it might not be true, but I think that like the concept itself is important, and I think also just like you know just like stop talking so much about what you're doing and take a look at what you've done, and appreciate that, and then continuously working, and like people say, move in silence. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And I did want to ask you more about that.
Yeah.
When did you start acting? And like, what kind
So
of stuff what kind of acting, I guess, jobs or
yeah.
training are you guys, I guess, doing?
So I initially like started acting back in middle school. And I was sort of training here in Dallas for like a few years, and it sort of went on the back burner of things that I was focused on. As I sort of like was deeper into high school, I started focusing a lot more on music. I produce, so I do a lot of like music production, and I sing and I play piano. So that sort of became like my biggest, I was like, all right, like I'm just gonna do music, um, and it's like one of my biggest passions. Um, and so, but I got really into film, just like filmmaking, and that was sort of like my acting had sort of transitioned into filmmaking. So then when I went to college, I was like, a lot more in directing, and like I made a lot of short films, and I shot like a lot of music videos and things like that for other people. And then recently I was like, okay, well, I used a lot of those skills that were filmmaking, and now I sort of want to transition to more behind the camera, because I've been essentially like, when you're making videos on TikTok, I guess depending on what you're doing, but to some extent like you're acting, especially if you're doing like anyone that's doing a get ready with me video, they're acting in a way, like they're
Hmm.
they're real, but they're not really, it's not as real as you think it is. Or
Right.
when I'm making a video with my dad and I'm saying like, today we're turning my dad into me, like it's like a show, you're technically putting on like a show. So I was like, well, I've sort of been felt like I've been acting on TikTok, especially with the vampire stuff, like doing like a lot of like just like things like, hey guys, like today I'm gonna run around in circles or whatever I was doing. So like, like that sort of thing. And so I sort of was like, all right, like let me hop back into acting, and let me start enrolling in lessons again. And I've been around a lot of sets, but I haven't been behind the camera in a while besides TikTok. So I sort of got back into it, and I started working with a coach here in Dallas. And it's been really great. And so then me and my team have been working on, just like next steps for that and what that looks like, and setting myself up with like the right people, so that, hopefully in whatever timeline, I can, step a little bit more into sort of what you would call like mainstream entertainment. And so that's just like really my goal, is that like, I like social media for me has always been sort of like, I don't want to say it's like a stepping stone for, like more of like a mainstream like acting and music, but because I think initially it was, but then I like did fall in love with it, and I fell in love with like, communicating with the people who follow me and things like that. So I'll never leave it behind like that, like that's not my intention. But I think that like now that I have set myself up with certain platforms, I was like, wait, now I think I sort of had those, like I sat back and I was like, okay, wow, wait, like I've always talked about, once I can build a platform large enough, I want to, promote some music, and I want to, try to step into acting. And now I'm like there. So I was like, okay, whoa, like I'm here. So now what can I do, and what steps can I take to, get there? And so that's really the biggest thing, is like now, we're trying to, set up with the right people and whoever, and talk to just start auditioning more, and, get into the right groups and talking to the right whoever, casting directors, whatever. And so that like, hopefully I'm not gonna set a timeline, but like hopefully in like, whatever amount of time, like I can, at least be on like a show or something or whatever. And then from there, we can see where that goes. And so I think like it's like taking those steps. And I think like my first step is, being in something small. And then from there, it'll be like hopefully I can book something bigger, and then hopefully I can be on projects that I want to be on, and hopefully I can play a role that I've always wanted to play. And then, just like growing, and ultimately hopefully I can like grow. And so that's been like the biggest step. And I think like for me, that's my next biggest project, I would say, would be to, like you said, you guys are like really focusing on the podcast, and you guys are really focusing on this space. It's sort of like the same thing for me. I'm like, my next big thing that I'm working on right now is, trying to launch into like a more steady acting career. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. It's still pretty early on in terms of like what's going on. And me and my me and my team have sort of just been like recently in the last few months really diving deep and really setting groundwork. And so a lot of it falls on me too, though. Like, am I, so that's why like I'm working with the coach and just like getting the experience. Cause like I said, everything takes experience. And if I can be like, I can be, I could have been great acting 4 years ago, but not done any acting since then. So, I think just like at least being in like a class a week and taking on scripts and working on things, that'll like help me grow. And as long as I see growth, then I'm going to be happy. Like if in the next year I look back at old audition tapes, even if I haven't booked anything, if I look back at audition tapes from last year and I'm like, wow, like I've just grown so much, then I'm going to be happy. So.
Right. Yeah. A lot of or a lot of it is just behind the scenes, right? I know we don't really talk about it much because we're very beginner in it, but we do some acting, but we've only been in like a few commercials.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear, are you going for shows, and did you build up enough classes and stuff like that to be able to just go directly to shows? Because I feel like we kind of have to start with commercials.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like without getting too much into like detail, just because I feel like there's some behind the scenes things that I'm sort of like we're working on that I don't want to dive too deep in yet until something's coming to fruition. But essentially, like, we're figuring that out now. I think like I haven't set any necessarily like I haven't set any like I'm gonna be in a show necessarily, or I haven't been like I'm gonna be in a movie or a show. It's just sort of like I know that eventually I would like to land something like that. So if commercial gigs are like the first step, and we find out that like that's naturally the first step, then that's sort of like where I'll head to. But I think like I sort of have found myself in a little bit of a just like a like a good, or I feel like I've been blessed in some way, and also worked hard to like be in a spot where using like leveraging some platform, but also leveraging just like connections behind the scenes and things like that to hopefully land a spot with like people who like have more direct ins to shows and things like that. And I honestly don't know how it's going to play out. I might, we might talk to some people who work at certain companies or whatever, and they might be like, yeah, like he's good, but he's not ready to be in anything on that caliber. Like, let's get him in some side projects or student projects and build up more of a repertoire. Or he's great, but he needs more on-set experience, let's get him in commercials. And so I'm not 100% sure right now, but I think that like a lot of what I was saying, like building up platforms and stuff, and like sort of trying to leverage those to like set yourself in better positioning, has been something that like we've been trying to see, like, hey, like, okay, well, here's Nick, he's done, he has this much, and this is sort of the stuff he's done. He's also spent a lot of time in classes and worked with a lot of, done a lot of work. So like, how far can we get him in the door, and then once I get in there, and I don't know how far that will be. So, like hopefully, ideally, which I don't know, but like ideally it would be like, boom. And everyone's ideal situation is like, boom, place Nick on the lead of some show, right? Great, boom. But like, obviously that's not going to happen, So it's sort of like, I've done a lot of the groundwork for other things. So let's see what we can leverage and who we can talk to and what connections we can make to see how far in the door we can get. And then from that point, we'll work on just like everyone else has to work. And so I think like, I've always taken this route of like, you know, and it's funny because I always talk to my friend about this, about music, but it's the same thing. It's like he's sort of built music up, right? Started, boom, 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 music. And I've always been like, I'd love to like build a platform and then sort of pivot and promote music on that. And if you do that right, it can be great. Sometimes you do it and it's horrible. Sometimes you build music up and it never works. Sometimes you build it up and people just catch, So there's no right way to do it. But I think that's essentially what I'm doing is like, I've built a platform. Now, how can we shift that platform and sort of like, now that we have a little bit of like things that we can show people and things like that, how can we shift that and get you into the door a little bit further than if you had just started from nowhere? So, I may end up in the same place as everyone else. I may get super lucky, but I don't want to get my hopes up, but I also don't want to be like, that's never going to happen. So I just want to stay like, whatever happens, happens. And I'm pretty confident that my like team and my manager are like working hard on my behalf in terms of those things. And besides that, there's nothing more I can do besides just continue to train and continue to practice and pick on auditions and gigs whenever I can and just like grow. Because if you're not growing, though, I would be more disappointed if I looked back in 6 months and I have made no growth than if I look back in 6 months and I'm like, so
Yeah. No,
I don't know if that
think,
answered the question.
Yeah, no, you did. I think that you built up, we pretty much went in with really nothing on our resume. So I was curious of what, just hearing from you going for like to school for it. And, you're taking classes now, which was recommended for us. I don't know. We just haven't found any good ones or haven't made time for it, I guess.
Definitely hard. Yeah.
But yeah, I think especially social media as well, that does add, I think, a lot of credibility for exposure, and there is acting involved. Like you have to, as soon as you start the recording and then end the recording, you're really giving the best take as much as you can. So it, like you said, it is acting. So yeah, you definitely answered the question well. And I don't think the TV show is too far out for you. I think, you could land it on your first acting job too. Like anybody could you don't have to start in commercials or even take classes. You could get lucky, but I think the way you're doing it is a really smart way to do it.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I just think, yeah, like I 100% agree with you. I think it's easy to look, I feel like a lot of people too, like I feel like there's a lot of influencers and content creators that feel like once they built a platform, they like deserve some certain spot, And I feel like I just like I try not to ever have that mindset of just like, hey, like I built a platform. Why aren't you, like, why am I not being booked? Because like, you don't deserve anything. You might've built a platform, but there's someone who's been acting for 10 years who deserves that spot way more than you, or whatever deserves means, but like, that person, why would you deserve that any more than that person? And so I think that like, just like focusing on the things that I can control and leveraging the things that I can, and just like growing and just like using those, in any ways that I can is like all that's important to me. And really like, hopefully they end up, it ends up working out, and, hopefully I do land a spot, but you never know. And it is funny too, because you see people like on Euphoria, like I don't know if you've seen Euphoria, but the guy who plays Fez, which is like, he was like picked up off the street, like no acting experience, nothing. And so it's like, you never really know. Like you could have no platform, nothing, boom, in the most popular show. You could have the greatest platform, boom, never get anything. You could, be acting for 10 years, get everything, get nothing. So it's like it's all unpredictable. So the only thing you can do is control the things you can control, and leverage those when you can, and then just like grow, and hopefully you find yourself in a place that you're happy, and just being happy with the progress that you make. And that's mainly the most important thing, is looking back and being like, I'm so happy that a year ago, or like now, I'm so much stronger as of an actor than I was a year ago, or I'm so happy I booked that one small role, you know, and just being grateful for the things you have.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then, like you said, like you could be scouted and picked up for something amazing out of nowhere. Like I know there's been like a very famous like model, like male model who did that. So that can happen. I also have found that you know, these commercials and acting has been very like humbling, I guess.
Yeah.
As well as we've shot ourselves in the foot a little bit doing this, but I don't know why we do this. We like to keep everything separate, so we just don't even like use that leverage. So I think you doing that is actually really smart.
Yeah. I think like I think y'all should like I think I think it's great. I don't know exactly how y'all are going about it, but I think that like, you know, leveraging, I would say never be afraid to leverage what you've built because you built it, you know? So like if you know, if you guys have built platforms and you can show, so if you can show them anything you can show them, you know? And so I would say never be afraid to use it, but also, you know, at the same time, like be be humble because like I think a lot of people as they like grow or whatever, they lose a little bit of like touch with reality.
Right.
And I think that's dangerous because then once you start to not, you know, understand where you like sort of came from or whatever, then you know, nobody wants to work with someone who's difficult to work with or thinks they're deserving of everything. So, but I think like definitely never be afraid to leverage the things that you guys have built, you know?
Right.
So next time go in and be like, look at this.
Yeah, exactly. And I was really curious too. You mentioned your team. I was just curious how many people or what are the positions that you have with your team, like a manager or agent or I guess what makes them.
So yeah. So right now, like the primary like my primary point of contact is my manager, but and he's great. His name's also Nick. But so it's like Nick and Nick.
Yeah.
But so he's like my primary, he's like my primary you know, we do like everything and basically like all big tasks and projects and daily things and everything we work together. Beyond that, like his sort of like he works with a specific company, so a lot of like people and things within the company we also get some from. So let's say like certain brand deals might come across, you know, other people that sort of like works with that aren't directly on me, but they're sort of like with me. And so then like a lot of things, some things will come from that. And there's also higher ups at the company who like, you know, will work with me and like things like that. So as far as my direct team, it's like me and my manager. And then also as we like grow, you know, there's always talks about like who should we add to like build out and grow the team. And I think that like, you know, there's a lot of next steps to be done. For me, like I know that, you know, sometimes I get overwhelmed and it's like, all right, well, maybe should I hire, you know, like an assistant to work with me or like an editor to work on these videos, or should I work with, you know, whatever. So, and then also like agencies and things like that. And so I think that like, you know, I think we're in the process, without getting into like too much detail right now, we're sort of like in the process and talks of like adding certain people in certain areas onto the team. But right now it's like mainly us direct to, and then like the people above him and people cross platform with him or cross like level with him that like we work with a lot. And so that's been great. And then like as far as like my personal team, like my girlfriend basically like helps me with everything. My dad also does help brainstorm ideas and a lot of things like that. So beyond just like people who I actually work with on like greater ideas, like those people are like essential into my life, you know? Like
Yeah.
I would definitely not be able to get out content as frequently and stay as mentally stable as I can without like my girlfriend and my dad and my brother helping me out on videos when he and my whole family pitching in. So it's like my team is like a lot of people, but like the people that I my team would be like mainly my manager, and we're working to expand that literally like we've had several talks about it and sort of like who we need. And yeah, you never want to rush, because when you have a team of people, um, unless they're friends and family, you have to pay the people who you're working with, essentially. And so you always want to be really careful with who you're hiring on and how you're expanding. And obviously your manager is going to be like your main point, um, and they sort of like are your bread and butter when it comes to like that, and they care probably the most about you, and like however you guys have that financially, whatever. But then moving that, like if like just like for some context or whatever, like let's say like I wanted to have an agent, right? I can be like, oh, I want an agent, I want a publicist, for PR, I want blah 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 blah. But then like if you have a publicist on retainer, like that's probably going to be, it can be several grand a month. Whatever. You want an agent that's going to take an extra 10% out of certain cuts. You want like a lawyer on retainer that could take like 5% out of certain things. It could take, or it could be like an hourly rate depending on how you have it. So really keeping your team like specialized and keeping it like small. And a lot of times, like I know that me and my manager talk about, like certain events, like if I'm going off to an event, like I'm going to Fashion Week in a couple weeks in New York, and it's always like, I'm always like, should we like work with a, publicist for this or PR for this? And he'll be like, yeah, we can, let's see what we can do. But also we could hire it on, because it's always about like saving as much money and not giving as much away to like other people if you don't need to do it. And like, if someone's willing to work really hard with you, keeping it there is always better than just expanding and throwing money at people, because you want people that are going to care about you and really push you forward. And I think like we always say, we always talk about, me and him, is that like, especially when it comes to like publicists and PR and people like that, is like hire people on for projects and hire people on to promote certain things, but you don't always need everyone on retainer. Like, yes, if you're Kylie Jenner, you do, but like if you're, let's say like y'all, you really wanted to promote some new clothing line or something that you're dropping, then you might want to hire a PR publicist to promote this certain project, and you pay them for like those 2 months or whatever. And then you sort of like take a step back and you keep that relationship going, but you're not like having them there and paying them when they're doing nothing. And so I think like that's the important part. And so as we expand my team and work on things like that, we're keeping a lot of that in mind, and like who's necessary and what people really care and want to see, want to see me do well, and who do I trust, and all of these things. So it's just a lot of things to keep in mind. But as you continue to grow and take on more projects, it's like more important that the people you're surrounding yourself with are, the right people, and you're not just throwing money at people and hiring people for no reasons,
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That's so true. Cause I think that's part of the reason why we haven't kind of added someone to our team yet, is cause we're still unsure of how much money or, whatnot.
Yeah.
But I was curious to ask you, cause we haven't, we're not getting we haven't gotten a manager or an agent yet, but we've kind of talked to a few people here and there, but we're not sure exactly, like if we should, is it beneficial, or I guess, is it not?
Yeah.
I guess when is it essential?
Yeah. I think like, you guys are in a really dope situation, because there's like two of y'all that can sort of run it. So, I think in some ways, like you are each other's managers in a way. I'm sure, I don't know exactly how y'all things work, but I'm sure that y'all come to like joint decisions. And then also like some days one of y'all might feel like, I'm really doing like assistant work today, but like, or like, but whatever it is. So I feel like you guys are in a great position. I think it's never too late to add someone like a manager, and it's never too early, as long as you're not like, you're not, I guess like a lot of managers work on like a percentage base, right? So essentially like they aren't making anything unless you're performing well. And so I think like that's like important too, like how y'all set up your contract. So let's say you guys want to bring on a manager, and it's just a friend or whatever at first, or it's someone at a company or whoever, and they're like, okay, we want to take 25% of everything, I would be like, whoa, okay, like what are you going to provide for me that's different than what we can provide for ourselves? And like, what are you going to, and then what, like what differences are you going to make? And then, like set contract or set terms, or maybe do a trial period, be like, all right, for the next month or two, we're going to like really try it out, and you'll take X% of like what is going on. And 25% is a lot. Like most managers are not taking 25% by any means. I'd say like, 20% is like somewhat standard, 15% is great, 10% is even better, but really like, it's just a matter of, how much do they care about you specifically, or like, what do you need? So let's say y'all need more exposure in certain ways, like you want to be at more events or whatever, and so y'all want more in-person exposure at things like that. Then maybe you need to work with someone who's involved with like a lot more, really like mainstream names or whatever, so that they can like have those connects to get you into like blah 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 or blah blah blah. Or maybe you need someone that's just going to work really hard at like getting you brand deals. Then maybe you need to go, work with a manager, or at that point maybe an agent, because a lot of agents are like more transactional. Maybe you just need an agent to get like steady, really really steady income, where you're getting 2-3 brand deals a month, or like you set up like deals that are like 6-month deals where you're doing one video a month or something. So it really just depends on like what y'all need in the moment. And I know that like when I was first starting, like this isn't my I was working with someone previously before this, and they were great. Like it was like one of my like a really good guy, and he was super super talented and like really hardworking. And we just got to a point where like I needed different things in like the way that we were managing, or like we were working together, and I just needed different things. And we sort of like talked, and it was like, he was providing things that were great, and like I felt strong, but I needed different things to work on. So I like switched over to, like a new team and a new manager, and I got a lot of those things that I felt like I was missing, and it's just really like finding who works best with you and what you need, really. And so I don't know. Yeah, I think like, when you'll a lot of people will come at you, especially like as you continue to grow or get whatever. A lot of people will come at you and be like, hey, like we can provide you this and this and this, and all we take is 20%. And you can be like, you have to sit back and be like, all right, like, do they actually care? Like, what are they really doing? Like I feel like a lot of people, the best managers are the ones that like want to see you succeed, and then also like you can have open conversations with, and they understand like what you are looking for, and I think like that's just the biggest thing, because sometimes friends can be the best managers too, and they want to take like basically just, they're like, I'm not going to take anything until we're in a place where we're able to take something. Sometimes you need someone that's really, really high up at a company that just knows a lot of people, Sometimes it just depends on like what situation y'all are in. And I feel like, when the time is right, the time is right. But I would say always be on the lookout, but also never be on the lookout, let it come to you, but always be looking, kind of thing.
Like never need it, but like still keep your options open. Like if someone does come to you, entertain it, kind of.
Exactly. Like entertain. I always like to say like entertain most people, unless like clearly this person's like, it's like a scam, but like, like never count anyone out necessarily. And like, don't be desperate for one, because I think like y'all are doing great without one. But I think like if someone comes to you, or you find someone and you're like, oh, I heard you're a manager, like would you be interested in talking? And you talk to them and you're like, gosh, like this person would be great. Then boom, you got it, do a test run, trial run. I always usually do, I think like for both teams that I worked with, have been trial runs of like a month or two, and then we sort of like get into something a little bit more formal, just to see, because you never know, y'all, it might be great on paper, and then you start working together and you guys are just like, we don't communicate the same, we don't have the same interests, goals, anything.
Yeah
that's true.
100%. And I did want to like, getting managers and agents is important to have a constant income flow. And I wanted to ask you, you know, you can dive into percents if you would prefer, but I'm curious of like what comes from brands, what comes from different apps, I guess which apps, you know, just kind of, I'm curious to hear where that revenue does come from.
Yeah. I'd say most of my revenue comes from brand partnerships. And I think a lot of that does come from, I don't think it's the only way to get, you know, like solid brand deals or brand partnerships is through a team, like having a manager, like an agent or a team like that. But I think it does help take some of the work off you.
100%.
Yeah. So I think like having solid brand deals does not necessarily, you know, you don't need a manager for that, but it does take a lot of the work off. Because I know that like before I signed on, be like brands would hit me up on Instagram or maybe they'd hit me up on whatever.
Right.
And, you know, I'd negotiate, you know, like I really only did one, what I would say like large partnership before I was signed with the team. And it was stressful. It was scary because you're like, okay, like, am I getting scammed? Am I getting what's worth my time or whatever, you know? And luckily, like that ended up being great. And that company ended up being great. And the agency I worked with for the brand was like great. But now like I sort of like get to sit back a little bit more and focus on my creativity and like also just like other things that I want to focus my time in, and like I can feel like confident that like, you know, monetary like or like financially you know, I'm going to be like okay because I know that like, you know, my manager, my team is sort of like working on that. Whoever is sourcing the deals, whether or not it's my manager directly, whether or not it's other people in the company, somehow they'll end up back at me, and I could sort of like have the ability to like say yes or no or do what. Um, and so that's really great. I also do make, you know, you make some from like the creator fund. I got to be real. I had never pulled out my money from the creator fund, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it's not even as much as you would think it would be because it's a small, like it's a smaller portion than I think, you know, than something like YouTube AdSense or whatever.
Right.
But really like those ways are like the two like primary ways. And then I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean that's really it. A lot of like brand partnerships are like the bread and butter of digital world. You'll not if you don't have like if you don't have if you're not like working brand partnerships, um, whether that's you or your manager or team, it's pretty difficult to like stay like afloat financially. So just like being on top of that or having someone on top of that for you is like really good. And that's why like, you know, it's kind of scary sometimes because you're like, okay, well, okay, like shoot, like how's the economy doing this quarter? Like, are there going to be a lot of like brand partnerships, you know?
Right.
So it's like, so, you know, and it's a little bit like, when will I get one? When will I do this? But if someone's sourcing those for you and they know like, you know, like, hey, like I want to do like a brand partnership every 2 months, then like, you know, they'll source this for you. And I think that like anyone at any size can secure like brand partnerships really. Like there's a lot of UGC creators, there's a lot of people with like smaller followings, like, you know, like people who are like literally like under, not saying it's small, but like under like 10K, 20K, like that can make like be completely financially free.
Right.
Just because they've sort of like built up these like niche platforms. And I mean, that's great. Like, I think that like, you know, and then there's a lot of people with huge followings that like don't do anything because they don't want to. And I think like I sort of like fall in the middle where like I hate to overwhelm my followers and the people that follow me with brand deals. Like I hate it unless it's like something I'm super passionate about or like something that I really enjoy. But like, you know, you don't love to see like brand deals all the time. So I try to like make sure I have a balance of like these are what keep me able to create freely and independently, but these are also like, you know, that's not enough that you're like, ugh, why has Nick posted like 4 brand deals in a row? So I try to keep it to maybe like one a month, you know, maybe, you know, a little bit more, a little bit less. And I try to make sure that I'm securing brand deals that are like, you know, either like multi video, or they like are paying a little bit more because I'm putting more work in other ways, or, you know, just like better rather than just taking on everything on. And I feel like I'm sort of like, I have been like, since, you know, since I started, like I sort of got to this place where I have the privilege of like being able to do that, like say like, yes, I want to do that. No, let's maybe not work on that brand right now. But it's not always like that easy. Sometimes it's like, I don't necessarily want to do this brand deal, but it is like the best brand deal I've gotten in, you know, in like a month or two. So, okay, yeah, you know, like I'll run with this one. It's not my absolute preferred, you know, so you just got to like weigh like what's important and what do you need? And like, do you need to reinvest the money now? Do you need the money now? Can you wait another month, search for more? So, but really like brand partnerships are like the bread and butter of the digital world. And I think like, you know, if you can get to a place where or anyone who's doing it gets to a place where it's like you're getting them constantly, or you're able to like do ones that are big enough to like sort of carry you through like months or 2 months or whatever, then like that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Was there another part to the question?
No, that was pretty much it. I was just curious because a lot of ours and a lot of other creators is primarily brands. So I was just curious if you were doing like any YouTube, like long form, or I guess shorts now can make an income, but I guess so it's mostly brands is what you were saying.
Yeah, mostly brands. And I'd love to do I mean, I don't do a ton of YouTube right now. I post a lot of shorts, but yeah, it would be really cool. I feel like YouTube, there's a lot of money just in like AdSense if you can get views up, and then also like running ads, or obviously that is pretty much that. But like, you know, getting those up, and like I've seen like people like, you don't even need to necessarily be having crazy views or numbers, but just if you're like consistent on YouTube, you can make like very solid, you know, like money. And then beyond that, beyond just like AdSense, partnering with brands and like having people sponsor your videos, that also brings in more income. So I think that that's really cool. And I think that that's why a lot of people turn to YouTube to like be like financially stable, because like on TikTok, unless you're doing brand deals, and if you can secure those brand deals, like you're not going to be able to make enough money through like the creator fund, really.
Right. And that's kind of what we're trying to get.
And then bonuses.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say bonuses on Reels. Like I haven't quite dove into either, but I think it's a similar thing to TikTok. But yeah, you go.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say that's why we're trying to get YouTube started, you know, kind of putting our eggs in different baskets and something a little more consistent, I guess you can say.
Yeah. And I think that leads back to like what I was saying earlier about not just about like stress, because there is financial stress too, you know, like beyond just like being stressed about views and like, oh, are my views doing well? It's like, you know, well, if my views aren't doing well on TikTok, am I going to lose out on brand partnerships, or like a brand's not going to want to work with me until I can get those back up? So if you are running like several different, you know, platforms that are, you know, you're monetizing several different ways, then beyond just like mental health stress, you're also like, you take some of the financial stress off. So, you know, like, all right, YouTube's doing well this month, I'm set, or like we're set. TikTok's not doing as great this month. Let's get that back on track or get it back to where we want. But we're not like going to worry about like paying bills this month, you know?
Right.
So, and I don't know, do y'all do content creation full time, like full time, or do you guys?
Pretty much.
Yeah, we do. The only other aspect is like the acting every once in a while.
Basically.
Yeah,
so.
we do auditions a lot, but we will only get, you know, a few of those. Like the amount of time we put into it is very minuscule compared to social media. But we do, that's pretty much all we do. Like we don't really do anything else. Yeah, most of ours comes from brands, and then also we do a lot of we go live a lot on TikTok. So that's kind of like where a lot of it comes from too. That and brands mostly.
Yeah.
Have y'all found that going live on TikTok is like a good source of income?
Yes. So it's tough because the algorithm's different and many things can happen with how smooth it runs and just being seen by and having viewers on your live stream. But as far as we've
Mhm.
experienced, it can be really really beneficial and really good for that, especially
That's dope.
if you get into like this ranking and battles and stuff.
Yeah, that's mostly what it comes
Yeah.
down to is the battles, the live matches or whatever. If you can, like we try to go for the daily ranks, which is kind of like a whole nother world compared like on TikTok. It's like a whole different thing than videos and stuff like that. But if you could get on the ranks, that's a huge accomplishment, and the what it takes to get on there, you'll be making a good amount if you actually do get on there.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I feel like I've never dove into like the live world of TikTok. I've probably only gone live like a handful of times, maybe like four or five over my whole TikTok career. But I see a lot of people that I follow or friends of mine, mutuals, and they'll be live and they'll be, like on the rankings and things like that. And I've always seen that there's like tons of money and opportunity there, but it's just crazy to think because it's like it's so different than just like the regular viewing, scrolling, posting. And I just don't understand it. So it's cool that you guys are like really capitalizing and sort of like using that and having fun with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would say if I had the choice, we want to balance more getting a revenue source from videos and brands a little bit more than we do for the live, because the live can be stressful and it's like
Hmm.
active. Like you
Yeah.
have to be on there, you have to be to do
Like
pretty well.
screaming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to do pretty well, you pretty much have to be on there like hours and hours, and
It's
it's a,
surprisingly exhausting.
yeah, it's
So,
exhausting, but I feel like a healthier balance sometimes is doing videos and editing and working with brands and stuff
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah, it's crazy because I'll sometimes go on and I'll see it's usually like the same. I've actually seen y'all live quite a few times, but
Oh, cool.
oh really?
there's also a few other people that I am like just mutuals with, and I'll see them like literally screaming like, come on guys, we can, come on, like, like we got
Right.
this, we got
Yeah.
this. And I'm like, and I'll see them and I'll leave and I'll come back like 2 hours later and they're still screaming. And I'm like, gosh, like how do you keep the energy up for that long to like get
Hmm.
people that engaged in like, the rankings and engaged in like giving gifts and engaged in like, and they're like, it just seems a lot more, it's a whole different and like very more or very like stressful side, I feel like, of TikTok,
Yeah.
Yeah,
which is
definitely.
which
Which
is crazy.
yeah, and don't get me wrong too. It's going live on TikTok is absolutely amazing, even for networking and meeting people that you would otherwise
Hmm.
never meet. Like we've gone live and we're friends with 420 Dogface. Like it's so random. Like
That's cool.
um you would never know. And so it's really good with that. But as far as a creator aspect, like from our point of view, it's not as fulfilling, I guess you could say, as making
Yeah.
content because it's not as of a creative process, as well as it's not really as much of a long term
Yeah.
thing as far as like I guess residually speaking.
Like you're only as good as like your last live, basically, is kind of how I would
Hmm.
explain it. Because after that, it's kind of, it's there's nothing else. Like you're not live anymore, so you're not talking with people. You're not, so as far as like constant effort, it takes a lot to just restart the next day and things like that. But yeah, we've made a lot of great connections just on live, and I think we're more of a laid back personality, so we enjoy talking to
Hmm.
our people, the people that watch our videos, and we get constant feedback,
Yeah,
and we really build that relationship, and it makes it more fun, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's great to build that
that's cool.
it helps build that community, and I have to say like our community is a million times better and stronger because of it.
Yeah.
Um, as well as it's great to communicate almost directly to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the greatest part about, and some of the things that I feel like I miss out by not going live as often is really like getting those one-on-one, well, basically one-on-one communications with like people in the comments, or like, talking to people. And then, or I think you can even bring other people on, like whatever needs, whatever happens, just like fostering a little bit more of that community in that way. And I think like, fostering community too is like really important with social media. And, you as like a creator, it helps if you feel connected to the people you're making content for rather than just detached. And it helps, not only does it help you to like create better and want to create more, but it also helps you just in general. Like if the people you're making content for feel like they know you and they, and they care about you, then like it's better for everyone. They're going to enjoy your content more. You're going to enjoy making it more. It's going to perform better. They're going to be more engaged. It's just like, it's, and I think that's why, a lot of like Get Ready With Me and like a lot of like lifestyle, girls, guys, whoever's doing it, um that's why they like do so well and they really enjoy like making the content they're making, is because they're really just engaging with their audience like that. And they have a little bit less, I feel like, burnout, because they actually like can feel the benefits, or they can feel the energy and like
Right.
the what they're able to give, and sort of like they're playing back and forth. Whereas like if you're just a content creator pumping out content and you're not really engaging with your community, then you're going to get tired. And then your audience is going to get tired of not really getting to know you, just getting to see you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that too. It's like, it might be a bit of a slower growth. Like you're not going to go viral or whatever, unless you're Emma Chamberlain, of course. There's examples
Yeah.
of it, but
Or Alex Earl.
yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, definitely establishing that community, and they find out. I think, I mean, I think just generally speaking, everyone's chasing, like viewers are wanting more authenticity and more real content.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, they enjoy your content more because they get your little nuances and certain humors that are a little under the radar that you wouldn't even know. So it's more enjoyable for them as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's like, that's true. And I think like authenticity is really important. And I think that's like, me and I always, and I'm not even great at it, but my manager is always like, make sure you post on Instagram more. Like people want to see what you're up to on like a regular daily basis. Like they don't only want to see these curated forms of content. And so I've been really, trying to do that more. Like, hey, like, I'm out. Like I was just in LA this past weekend, and I was like, me and my friends went out. So I was like, it was basically like I'm at dinner and then I'm here and then we're out and then we made it where we're going. And, people could sort of follow the story of like how my night went. And it wasn't really curated. It was like I was there and I was like, hey, like someone take a picture of, I literally think we got like a random person to take a picture of like all of like my friends like at the bar. And then I just like posted it on my story and was like, we made it, and people were like, yay, like we're so happy, because like I had been posting about it all night. And so just like keeping those and keeping it like more authentic and not trying to be authentic, but just like actually just being authentic and posting what you want, is like people really appreciate that. And now people will, those people who are engaged in that are going to be more likely to like comment on a video or comment on a post or want to see more of what's going on. And it's fun to see people like message you or like respond to polls or do things like that, because it's way more fun as a creator to see what people are saying rather than just like posting and then moving on with my day,
Yeah. I think ourselves and a lot of other creators, I feel like there's going to be more of a shift this next year of where there is going to be more of that, because I feel like there were so many trends this last year and it was just all about, jumping on the trend and stuff, that ourselves and a lot of other creators that stuck to trends during this past year have really kind of not gotten the chance to film as many vlogs or as, just stuff that they really get to know you through the video. And I think that would be a cool thing that I think this next year that I think a lot of creators might do.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people who are viewers and just like watchers of social media are like craving that. Like they want to see, they're tired of seeing, you've probably heard like all these people like, short form burnout, like blah, blah, blah. But like, I think it's true. Like a lot of people are like craving like authentic, like content and wanting to watch people who provide, like and I'm not going to say like they provide, like education or anything, but like they just provide like life, and like they're
Right.
like, like the get ready with me's or things like that, people that are just providing like an extra step beyond just like a trend. And that's what the guys struggle with too, is, like not, um, it's easy to just hop on a trend, but it's harder because sometimes you'll post a get ready or like a vlog style thing, and it won't do as well because it's like, people aren't watching as long. But if you start posting those things and people know that every time you post, it's gonna be a 30 to 40 second clip instead of like a 5 second one, then people are gonna start watching longer. And then that's why those people, start to do better, and then they'll start to feel like they know you better, and you'll get to know your audience better, and it's just like a win for everyone, basically.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, it in a way, that's kind of why I think YouTube is good for that as well, and why it'll never go away as well, because it has like it's mainly original content, and it's not really trends and stuff. Like it's actual content.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, YouTube, you can't like hide behind a trend for creativity. Like you have to just
Right.
be thinking of new things. And I
Right.
think that like that's really important. And I think that's why like the most successful YouTubers, are ones that are like innovating, or like, they have their own specific, sorry, there's something, ones that have their own specific style, like Emma Chamberlain. Like she had her specific editing style that like was kind of new and fun, and then a lot of people hopped on that trend, and then it was like, it was like okay, people are doing it like Emma Chamberlain did it or whatever. And so there are things in YouTube that like formulas that you follow, but there's not like a new trend every day or two that you just get to hop on and, hopefully ride the wave of the sounds doing well, so my video will do well, which is like easy to do on TikTok. And I do that all the time, especially when I don't feel like being creative. It's like, all right, well, what's a popular trend that's like kind of easy that I know is going to do well? Maybe it's like a cap cut thing that I just pop in a couple photos or a video, or maybe it's a sound that I'm just going to like lip sync, and,
Right.
and so it's like, but forcing yourself to be outside of your comfort zone and be creative is like what sets you apart. And I think that's like where you see the most growth and where people engage with you the most as well.
Yeah. No, 100%. And we want to kind of we've been saying it for a while. We do want to do more long form YouTube stuff, but we also want to incorporate that same, kind of get ready with me, like get to know, like have people get to know you through the short form videos as well.
Yeah. And I think that's super key. And I think like y'all would do a really great job at that too, because I feel like it's cool. Cause I feel like, especially like I know it's like twins or whatever, but like also that like it's like a unique perspective, which I feel like, like you guys could do a lot of things in terms of differences between like y'all's routines or whatever, and like just talk about like things like that and do it in long form. Because a lot of people, and I'm sure, and I think y'all have done this, like answered questions about being twins and things like that before, but like, re-engaging in those conversations and having them in longer form content, and people will stay and watch those, so I think it's like cool. And then also just like your regular, what y'all are doing, like you guys are like, doing things like traveling and hosting podcasts and talking to cool people, and like people like to hear about other people's experiences. So, I think like you guys already have, and are consistently having more of, like an interesting life that people would want to hear about. And I think that like, just like putting that on the internet, people will catch on,
Yeah, that's a good point. We do need to do more of the kind of like behind the scenes of like simple stuff, like differences, like you said, what's your morning routine, or just stuff that we may differ in, that people, just stuff people think might be funny, or they might just want to see the contrast of our personalities.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like you guys already just naturally, like being twins and having your sort of like things set up like that, you naturally have something that people want to just like learn more about or see. And so I think like diving in and being that creatively, like basically like y'all have each other to like pull from, like I that's why like working with making videos with my dad is great, because I can always like pull from him or my whole family. It's like, I'll work with, people, if people are tired of just seeing me, boom, like my dad's in there. And then, then it's like me and my brother, and like people like to see like different things. And you can get so creative with like the way that you're doing those things, but also have a formula. So it's like the same thing, get ready with me or my morning routine, but the difference in it is that like we're talking about differences as twins, or we're just going through it and showing y'all, and then like things like that, just like you can do things but like spice it up kind of, and then people love the same formulas but just different spice added on top.
Would you ever start like a family channel with maybe your dad or your brother? Because I know you were talking about you wanted to film a lot of videos with your brother, like last time we spoke. Is that something that's possible, or is it just because you guys are in different spots that it's hard to kind of coordinate that?
It's hard to coordinate now a little bit with my brother, just because he's like off in college freshman year, and I don't always want to like, I kind of want him to enjoy, because I was able to enjoy college. So I want him to enjoy that. So I'll hit him up about like videos that we can do apart and things like that, and then we'll do them. But I try to leave him, like some of his peace at least. But I think like a family channel was something when I first signed on with my new team, especially. We were like, okay, like should we start a family channel? Blah blah blah. And I think one thing that about it, the primary reason why I didn't and haven't sort of dove more into like a family channel is because in the end of the day, like I sort of like I wanted to keep the platform. I don't know how to really say this, but like I guess like I wanted to keep the platform like more about like less about family and more of just like about like things that I was doing, and didn't necessarily want to become a family channel. So I could start a family channel, which then it's like then I have to run that, and that takes time away from other things that I want to do. And so and it really like my family and my mom and my dad and my brother, they're not necessarily like looking to be, like the next big family.
Right.
But they do enjoy helping me out with videos and being in my videos. And so I think like the reason that I sort of have kept it separate is because a lot of it is like, they want to support me rather than like merging together and becoming like one family. And so that's sort of like the reason. But that was sort of like the initial reason, is because I was like, oh, well, I want to, take this to other places and do things. And I feel like if you merge into a family channel, you kind of become a family channel. And so I sort of like wanted to stray away from that and have the ability to sort of like go off and do other things and change up my content if I wanted and things like that. And my family was always like, yes, like we just want to do whatever sort of like supports you,
Yeah.
So that's basically like the short answer to that, or the answer to that. So
yeah, that's completely understandable, because again, you're doing like basically all of it. You're coming up with ideas. You're, controlling all of it. And as far as a consistency point, it definitely makes a lot of sense too. It's just you can control your time and all that, and be able to make content.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing too, because I feel like as creators we take a lot of the responsibility, but if you did end up bringing them in there, then that kind of puts stress on them to where they feel like they're obligated to put in more time and all this. And if it's if they really just enjoy doing the short videos, like you said, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people always ask me like, oh, is your dad going to make a channel? Like, will your dad make a channel? And I'm always like, he would make a channel, but like in the end of the day, like I would probably have to run that channel for him, just because like he doesn't really like make videos or know how to make videos, or he might have an idea that he wants to do, but like he would like turn to me to execute it. And so it's just easier, just like for me, because I already have so much going on, to just like do the things we want to do on my channel, bring them in as like a part of that, and then like keep it there because it's easier to keep it streamlined. And so then I'm not like, boom, all right, like what do I have to make with my dad for his channel? What do I have to make for my channel? Okay, but then the family channel. And then even when in the end of the day, I really want to focus on other things, like I said, like acting and things like that. So it would just take so much time away from like those other projects that I want to work on. So I think like I'm happy with like where our channel, like how my sort of like channels are set up now and how my platform's set up now, and just sort of like having the freedom to like bring them in when they want and then sort of do my own thing when I want. And just like it's kind of the best of both worlds. And I think like, people do appreciate, I know that there are people on my platform who appreciate videos that are me alone, and people who appreciate videos with my mom, and people who appreciate videos with the whole family. And people are always looking for different things. So I think like the way it is set up now, I have the ability to kind of do all of that without, compromising like the integrity of the channel. Like if it was the family channel and there were only videos of me for a couple weeks because I was traveling, people would be like, what is this? This is a family channel. Why is it only you? But since it's my channel, and it's like me centered or focused, I wouldn't say centered, but like focused, then like people can come in and as they want, and they don't have to feel the pressures of being in a video every day. And I know my mom, she's super busy. So being in like a video every 2 weeks is still like a lot for her, Yeah. So it's like, she just doesn't have the pressure of like, if it was a family channel and I was like, we have to make content like every day, they would be like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even know how we're going to do that,
Right.
So. Yeah, that's a good point. I think you have a really good balance of your content. Like I really enjoy seeing your content because one, the transitions are incredible. The quality is there. Like, I don't know. It's just, you make it so engaging, I guess, that it's like, it's just enjoyable to watch, and it's not too much of one thing either.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I really try. I feel like the best that I can to like change up the content that I'm doing too, and like keep it like fun and engaging. And sometimes it's easier to just do a trend, and sometimes it's more fun to do a transition and change it up. And I think that like that's the hardest part, but like the most rewarding part is like finding a balance of like content that you're posting.
Right. So. And is there someone that you look to for like inspiration in social media, or kind of motivation or content ideas?
I think I wouldn't say there's like one person like that I look to and I'm like, I would love for like my platform to look like theirs. Like there's not someone like that, but there are people that I turn to, that I check in for like, all right, like what trends are they doing? What like transitions, or like, they might be on top of the game on like what trends are going on, or what sounds are popping off, or like what style of videos. And I think it also depends. Like if I'm like, if I'm seeing a lot of like get ready with me videos, and I'm like, I want to do a great ready with me video type of thing, then I'll look at a specific person and sort of like see, okay, like what are they doing here that works? What are they doing here that's like not working for me? Then like I'll implement those. But I think overall, like I look at like a lot of, mutuals of mine, and I just like will see their content, and I'll look at their pages, and they'll be from all different types. Like I have some friends or some people that do a lot more like, they'll do just a lot of like trends or like transitions. And then I'll have some people that do a lot of, vlogs. And then there's some people that do a lot of like story content, where it's sort of like, you have 10 lives, blah, blah, blah. And then they like tell a story. You see like those type of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'll like look at all those people and see what they're doing. And then it depends on sort of like what I'm feeling for the day. And then I'll sort of like look at those. But honestly, I turn to a lot of my mutuals, and because like see what they're doing and how they're doing. And then also just like popular creators on the app, like that are just like trending at the time, and like what's working for them, why are they trending right now, and what things are they doing that I can implement too, and what sounds and things are they doing. Sounds are important too. Like when you're it's one of the weirdest things about TikTok is that it's not always trends. It's sometimes sounds too. And there's not always a trend associated with the sound, but the sound might be doing well. So if you take that sound and you can adapt it to your style of video, or, then like it's going to do better than if you took another sound. So like a certain transition might not pop off with this sound, but it might do really well if I were to use this sound because this sound's trending right now, So it's
Right.
like
Yeah.
really weird. So it's always staying on top of like what's going on and who's doing what and who's using what and are people going to watch, And sometimes it's crazy too because sometimes like sounds will be like trimmed, right? Like people are only using the first 8 seconds of the sound, but the sound is like 14 seconds. So if you use 12 seconds of the sound, the video might not do as well because the most people are used to watching it only up to the 8 seconds. So after that 8 seconds, people are kind of like disengaged and then you're going to lose watch time. So it's also keeping track of like how long are people using the sounds. All right, like most people are cutting the sound at like the 8-second mark, 9-second mark. I'm going to start to like strive to do the same in my video so that my watch time's better. Because then if watch time's
Right.
better, views are better. So it's like a bunch of things that you're constantly thinking about. So I'm always looking out on like other creators for like how long they're using the sounds, what sounds they're using, what trends they're using. And then if it's a specific type of style of video that I'm looking for, then I'll like go in and, look more deeply at like, all right, let me do some of the things they're doing.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I didn't even really think about the length of the sound, but I guess we just kind of did it by habit of like, oh, they did this. Let's do something similar,
Yeah. Some of it's like it's just like intuition, like or I guess that'd be the right word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're just like, like it makes sense. Like, all right, like I saw them, they did the video into this point of the sound, so I'm gonna do the video into this point of the sound. So a lot of it just like falls naturally, but I think like it's harder if you like, but if you are actively thinking about that, you won't find yourself into like a situation where you're like, man, like why is it that like, oh, like shoot, I should have cut the sound like 3 seconds earlier in hindsight, you could just be like, oh, okay. Most people are only using the sound tool here. And I think TikTok sort of does a thing if most of your videos are being filmed in app as well, where it sort of takes the trimmed part of the sound. So you don't have to worry too much about it. Like if you just click use sound, it'll like be like sound trimmed to like 8 seconds. And so you just use that portion of the sound, which is like the portion that everyone's using. But a lot of times I have to stay a little bit more on top of that because I'm taking it out of app and then bringing it back in. And so I'm like, okay, like where should I cut it? Or should I like, to make sure that it like matches what everyone else is doing?
Yeah. No, that makes it a little bit more complicated too, because when you guys film your videos, if you film it outside of the app, do you have the sound playing out loud as you do it, or?
Yeah, it's actually a funny setup. I usually just have like my computer playing the sound.
Okay.
So it's like my computer will be like playing the sound next to us. So we have to basically be like on track with the sound and then playing that alongside us. So let me give an example. Yeah, like for one of the transitions, essentially like I'll pull up like I'll pick a creator, or even if I've used the sound in the past, right? Like if it's a transition, I'm using the sound again, I'll type in like blah blah blah, go to my TikTok page on my computer, and then it'll just play on repeat. And so then we'll just set up that, and then we'll sort of like go through it, and then we don't even have to stop the camera, so we can just say it a couple times, 1 2 3, go through it, and then like okay, reset, go through it. And so it's just like we do like 4 5 6 takes of the same thing without stopping the camera, and then we'll be like, okay, those are good, or oh shoot, the light, it was weird, set it up again. And then we can like I'll just like airdrop those to my laptop, and then I'll screen record the sound and throw it in. And then usually when I put it back in TikTok, I'll like turn down the original sound and just only have the added sound.
Oh, right.
But I usually will screen record it and put the sound in the editing app just so I can match everything up. So that everything's, but usually like I cut it so that right when I put it in TikTok, like, like when sounds, original sounds and additional sounds match up to get a very like, robot sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once I hear that and I know they're exactly in sync, I'll turn down the original so that it's only the added sound, because I have like a superstition that added sounds, some people will say like keep the original sound, turn down the added sound, but I have a superstition that it's like keeping the added sound, turning down the original sound is the best move, because that's the one that they want to push.
Right.
I
So it's
agree.
like all these like small subtle things that it realistically might not matter, but in my head it's like that's just how I do it. And I use the same hashtags every video, just because like it's always the two hashtags that I like to use.
Right.
And I feel like if I don't use them, the video won't do well, which is like probably definitely not true. But in my head, it matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely, stick with whatever works.
Mm-hmm.
But that's curious to hear that's good to hear, because I was always curious on how people did these certain videos, because I was like, it's too exact, like it's too perfect. How do they know?
Yeah.
But I figured that's what they did. But
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a lot of like timing it, putting it out, or like playing it out loud. And then when I edit it together, a lot of times, like sometimes it'll be slightly off and I'll have to like, but you have the freedom. Like in the app, you can do it and watch the playback and you're like, all right, it works, right? But when you don't do that, you sometimes have to leave a little bit up for chance and be like, hopefully when my foot, or like if it's a transition, hopefully when my foot crossed the screen, my dad's crossed the screen at a similar time enough that like when I put them together, the words will match. And sometimes I'll have to play with the speed. So maybe my dad's foot will move it'll be at like a double speed so that it moves quicker to get his lyrics, because he was like a little bit behind me or something. But I have that like leeway. Whereas if you mess up in the app, you can't really do much. So I do like having that extra level of like, if something's not perfect, I know I can probably fix it in editing. And then if I can't, then like, I guess we try again tomorrow. But usually like I can come up with like a workaround for if something's messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Those are a lot of like little things that you would never really know go into it if you weren't doing it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to hear too, because filming and trying to make content with family and stuff can be kind of fun or funny, and there's some moments that don't get captured. Is there any like funny stories that you guys have, or that you have, that someone would, the audience would like to hear?
I mean, I feel like it's funny because I feel like sometimes things just go completely like just get completely derailed, or they just end up like so bad. Like I know that sometimes this is not really a specific story, but a lot of times my dad will like lip sync. He'll spend like, I'll give him the lyric. I've learned that I have to give him like the lyrics of what's going on like at least like an hour in advance so that he can sort of like learn it, or he'll, even if he's not practicing it, he'll be reading it. Because if I try to give it to him like the moment of, and I'm like, hey, like, can we get this done in like 20 minutes? There's no way he's going to be able to learn that, Because for me, it's like I've seen this sound like 100 times on my For You page. So it's like, boom. But for him, he's like, I don't even know what they're saying. So I give it to him in advance. But sometimes he comes in like too prepared, to the point where basically, he'll be like, he'll just be like too into it. And I'm like, whoa, calm down, like tone it back. Like he'll be like bobbing his head and stuff. And I'm like, all right, too much. But yeah, so things like that are always funny because, sometimes we're like over prepared, and then I'm like, all right, let's tone it back. My brother too, he always, I feel like I always catch him at like bad times, but he never wants to like say no, which I'm always like, if you can't do it, just let me know. But sometimes his friends will be over or something, and he'll be like, all right guys, I'll be right back, I'm gonna go film, and he'll just leave his friend in like the other room for like 10 minutes 15 minutes while we film. Or something. I remember one time we did like that, that video where it was like you knock into each other, and it was like the Zoolander.
Oh yeah.
Oh
trend.
yeah.
His friend was over, and he's like a friend of a friend, and we were gonna go to the gym, like all three of us. And I was like, all right, well, we have to finish this. So we ended up like having him, who has never made like a video like that, just like filming us. And he was like, I thought we were going to the gym. And we were like, we are going to the gym, but you need to like film us for like 10 minutes. And he was like, he wasn't actually mad, but he was like, wow, I'm never coming over early again.
Yeah.
Just like funny things like that. So things like that happen all the time where someone random will have to come in and help out, or like, just like funny bloopers and things. And then sometimes my dad will be like, I want to try something different. And he'll like just try something random. Like, and it's just like, he does it and it just turns out horrible, and we'll just like laugh about it. So there's always funny moments when you're working with family. And I think the best part about working with family is that like, you can be like brutally honest without being like mean, but you can just be like, horrible take, let's do that again. And they're not going to be mad, whereas like if you're working with someone else, you have to be a little bit more like, oh, like, well, let's try that again. For me, I'll be like, that was horrible. Like, what? Let's run that again,
Yeah.
And like, it's like there's no hard feelings. And so, yeah, so it works well. And I feel like our family works well together, which is good. And so it's just hard to organize sometimes, like getting my mom, my dad, and my brother all there in the same moment for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And sometimes I'll have to stagger them, where I'll work with my dad for 20 minutes and then I'll bring my brother in for 20. And then my mom will come like an hour later and she'll be like, sorry, and I'm like, it's okay. So it's like always managing all those people, and you learn a lot about like how to manage people. And it's good that it's my family, because, there's a lot more leeway and they don't get angry or they don't get annoyed, or they might get a little annoyed, but they're not going to get angry if I'm like running behind, whereas like if I was on an actual set, people are like getting paid and people are like have things to do and have things, they have to be off by 5 or whatever. So it's just like, it's a lot, and you learn a lot, and there's a lot of like lessons learned from it. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely good. I guess, do you have any like tips or anything? I know we've given a lot of advice throughout the podcast, but do you have any like tips or anything specific for people starting or maybe already doing it? The social media, I guess.
Yeah. I think I think the biggest tip would just be like, stay consistent. I know I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I was trying to say this in like a way that makes sense, that doesn't sound I don't know, but it's like the honest truth is that I feel like staying consistent is like the most important, and taking breaks when you need, and making sure you're prioritizing your mental health, of course, but also, trying to avoid burnout, and like making sure that breaks and things don't turn into you leaving, because ultimately, like, if that's what you want to do, if you come back, you're going to be in the same spot. So, get on the momentum, keep the momentum, take the breaks that you need, surround yourself with people that, understand what you're doing, and, what you're going through at any time, but then also just staying like super consistent. And, even if it means like, I don't think that you necessarily need to be posting 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day. You can just post once a day, or once every other day, or even, on Instagram. Like I have a posting schedule of, I post Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. So like just having a schedule that that you can stay to, and just sticking with that, and trying not to take like too much time off and too much time in between, and just like do something that you can manage, and stick with that. Because the really like the killer of most people in social media is like, or their success or their momentum is like really just like inconsistency, or like posting a ton for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then taking a month off because they like didn't, they can't handle it, which totally makes sense. But find a schedule that works for you, that that like mentally you're going to be able to do, you have time to do, and just stay with that. And then there's so much opportunity, and there's so much, room for people in the space still, even though it's so saturated. I get it, but there's so many people who are not doing, who aren't, you know, staying consistent and aren't, you know, there are people, there's
Right.
so many people in it, but I don't think there's that as many people as you think that are really doing it, staying consistent all the time and doing it. And like, eventually you're going to find success. And sure, you might not be, you know, the biggest creator, but you can definitely be financially independent with small numbers. And as long as you play it right and do it right, you can like find success in that. And I think also like having fun and knowing that, you know, finding like a purpose, you know, in several things that you can do. You know, like don't put all your eggs in one basket. I know that's something we talked about a bunch. Like I like to think less vertically in social media and more like diagonally. You know, I like to think like, all right, I'm growing my TikTok, but I'm also growing Instagram and I'm working on acting and music and things like that. And, you know, so then you'll know, you'll feel more successful if several things are going on at once, and you will be more successful if several things are going on at once. Because if you're only working on one thing and that's not doing well, you know, like that sucks and it feels detrimental. But if you're working on four things and two of them are doing okay, one of them is not doing well, but one's doing pretty well, you're like feeling pretty good about yourself, you know, and you are doing well. And so I think, you know, those are the biggest things, like consistency, like true consistency, like not spam posting for 3 weeks and then taking a month off, like just really just staying consistent with what you know you can do, sticking to that, and then also working on several things and, you know, working those in and managing your time well, and also taking breaks to hang out with your friends and have fun, but staying consistent.
Yeah, that's very
So yeah.
very good advice, and definitely true. And I think we have definitely been more focused on setting a foundation, getting all these different revenue streams like going, which
Mm-hmm.
seems like we don't quite have it all because one's not blowing up, but they're all kind of incrementally getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, no, I think that's really good advice because, like you said, if let's say for example, and like this has been a real fear for a lot of people is if TikTok just goes away, you at least have Instagram or you know anything could happen on any platform really. So it's really just being consistent on all those platforms, even if it's a little bit less on one and a little bit more on another or whatever it may be, just as long as you're uploading consistently to where your audience can really expect, like know what to expect.
Yeah. And just finding a schedule, like, you know, I'm not even 100%, like, I'm not perfect at this by any means, but like finding a schedule that like works for you and like, you know, prioritizing like prioritizing more than just one thing. And that's the hardest thing, because I know sometimes I'll be like, I need to get a TikTok out today because TikTok is technically, you know, like that's the one that I technically probably focus on the most, but it's like, and then, you know, someone around me will be like, especially my girlfriend, she'll be like, no, you need to like post on Instagram and YouTube because you haven't posted on those for like 2 days. And I'm like, shoot, you're right. Okay, let me not focus on TikTok. Let me focus on those, because in the end of the day, I'll be, you know, I'm gonna be way happier if, you know, all of those are like doing well, then, or like at least some of them are doing well, than if just one is doing like extraordinary, you know? So it's just like you said, like coming up like this instead of like shooting up like that, you know? And
Yeah.
so I think it's also just better for your mental health and everyone's mental health, because there's less like that's not the right word, vitality. Yeah, I guess that's the word.
Right.
Like it's less volatile.
mhm.
So yeah, and you just want to, you know, it's easy to stay like grounded if there's several things going on and know where you're at too.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we're a little ADD where we want to do all these different things, and which is why
Yeah.
it's hard for us to even stick to a niche on TikTok. So, I mean, of course, it doesn't help your page if you're doing all that on, you know, one account. So it's kind of also allowed us to do all these different things that we're interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's like really dope. And I feel like the fact that y'all are going live and the fact that y'all are consistently posting and the fact that y'all are working on this podcast and the fact that y'all are also focusing on YouTube stuff, like it's just like you can see how much like dedication y'all are putting into just several different parts. And I think like that's going to inevitably pay off. And it's already paying off, but it's just like even more in the future, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We
Yeah,
appreciate that.
thank you.
And I guess just
Yeah.
kind of wrapping things up here, we'd love to hear, is there stuff that you have planned for this next year? And is there more content? Like what should people expect to see from your page, and what kind of content are you going to plan on making?
Yeah, I think I think there's definitely going to be a lot more content with my family, more content with my dad and my brother, especially during the summertime. Like I'm sure there's going to be a lot of content with my brother and my family. But you're also hopefully going to see some music from me. That's like a big part of this year too. Um, that hopefully, like that comes in together. And then also like a lot of the stuff in terms of like acting, I want to take, get really involved in a lot of things, and hopefully things go well and I'm able to like talk about things that are happening in terms on that end. And I get to share those projects and things that come along with that. But then in terms of channels, like um, I'm just going to continue to post and I want to be more consistent. So on Instagram, you'll see me a lot more just like doing regular things, hanging out, because I feel like, I've wanted to give more of that. And then who knows where the rest will lead. I kind of take things as they go. And, I'd love to, do a little bit more of long form content on my channels, especially like TikTok and stuff. And, get people more involved in just like my regular daily life and have like fun with that. And hopefully people enjoy that. But, I don't know exactly what is going to come, but I know you could expect a lot of what, you know, you've already loved seeing or whatever. And then some new things and new adventures. And hopefully I can get to promote those and talk about those, and that I'll grow as the audience grows too. And so it'll be cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see more of that content, and I'm excited to really hear the music, because that was something that I completely didn't even know about. So I'm really excited to hear your music and kind of what you come out with.
Yeah, I appreciate. Yeah, it's very. We'll see. It's something I've worked on music for like a long time, but I'm not super vocal about it. And I think part of it is I want to keep it, and then once I'm ready, it'll be more sort of like that. So there'll probably be some pivots to promote some stuff like that this year as things come more into fruition, and we'll have to talk again and do some updates and see what's going on. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited. I think 2023 is going to be a good year for everyone.
Yeah. I sure hope so for everyone, for us, for you, for your family, everyone involved too. And then where can everyone find your content?
Yeah, you can find me on all platforms: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, at In the Nick of Time, or Nic Suarez on YouTube. Yeah, and just let me know. Engage, follow, whatever, subscribe, and then I hope everyone enjoys the stuff that I'm putting out in the coming months.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And thanks again. This has truly been an amazing podcast. There was not a time to where there was a dull moment. So it was constantly learning stuff about you, and a lot of fun topics that we touched on. So thanks again for coming on.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
Yep. Make sure to hang out for a minute after, just so we can get everything uploaded. Cool. But again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and it was a pleasure.
Sweet. Thanks for having me, and I'll hope y'all had a good time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, thanks again, and thanks everyone listening. We hope you guys enjoyed. But until next time, we'll see you guys. Thank you for watching, and we really appreciate you guys for listening as well.